Ladies and gentlemen, let's go. Let's go. We ain't got no time to waste. Let's go. You are now listening to Jason Anderson, and you are in the zone.
The Zone is presented by Guaranteed Foods, delivering all-natural food to Midwestern families since 1958. Enjoy healthier food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
All right, on a Monday edition of The Zone right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Sterling Holmes, Jack Johnson, Dylan Michaels. We had up until 2 o'clock. The next 4 hours, we've got you. A lot of stuff to get into and talk about today. It is draft week. Royals have 4 more games on this homestand against the Toronto Blue Jays starting today, wrapping up on Thursday, and then they will head to the NFL draft on Thursday night to hang out with the Chiefs and whoever is representing the Chiefs, and then they'll be there on Friday as well. So very cool that Bobby Witt and the fellas will be representing the Chiefs there at the draft on Thursday night. That's what's going on, right? That's why they're flying to Detroit on Thursday?
Has to be.
What other reason would you be flying to Detroit on Thursday for?
Coney Island.
There it was. Okay, so that's what it is. So okay, I thought it was for the draft. They have the weekend off. Everybody knows that after Thursday they've got the weekend off. They don't play anybody, but they're flying to Detroit. That's odd. No, but it is sort of random though, right? That the Royals are heading to Detroit for the draft. But they're also playing the Tigers, obviously, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But that's how the week lines up. Draft coming up on Thursday. We will have the coverage for you right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB with Sarim Petro, Curtis Seabolt, Mark Bowrichter. We'll have the draft coverage on Thursday night. Yes, it is in Detroit, and we'll see what the Chiefs end up doing. Brett Veach talked on Friday. We played that for you live right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB in the Zone. And he also talked with Kevin Harvick. He did a podcast with Kevin Harvick. I found that out over the weekend, so watch the podcast with Kevin Harvick, Happy Hour, Harvick's Happy Hour. So I've seen one episode of that. Seemed perfectly fine. And I found out that Brett Veach is a big-time sim racer in NASCAR. So now we know on the players that he misses on, it's because he's in his spare time doing the sim racing. When he hits on the players, then it's like, okay, now he's actually focused, ready to go. He's got a little Kyler Murray in him, you know, just a little Kyler Murray to his game. That, and he talked about, he's like, when I have spare time, which isn't very often, but like he's like way into it as well. Like he was talking about, you know, he's like 10 laps in, like the back end's getting loose, and I can't. So I'm calling Clint Boyer to help me fix and align my car so that these highly competitive races that he's going on with. There was some interesting things there in the if Brett Veach was struggling as a GM, that would be a big conversation, right? People would be talking about, hold on, this guy can't figure out free agency, can't figure out draft or trades, and he's a sim racer. He's spending his spare time, but also you do need to get away from work. You need to take some time to get away from work. That's right. Just wind down and do something that is a hobby that you enjoy from time to time.
I was not going to lie. When you said Kevin Harvick,
yeah.
Now this makes sense.
You thought I meant Kevin Harvey?
No, I was like, what is he saying, Kevin?
What about Ken Harvey?
The NASCAR driver?
Yeah.
Well, I was befuddled. I was like, why is he on a podcast with a NASCAR guy? And now it all
Veach is a big NASCAR fan.
Full circle.
He's a big NASCAR fan. I didn't realize that either. So he's a huge NASCAR fan. He's talking about drivers that he's friends with. He's talking about all the races he's gone to, you know, experiences he's had and things like that. So, yeah, it was an interesting podcast. But there were some things that came from that podcast, including him talking about DK Metcalf. Specifically talking about DK Metcalf. So we'll play some of the clips from Brett Veach today from Friday's show and his Zoom press conference, the pre-draft press conference that they have every year, in which he gives you everybody, 1 through 221 apparently on his board, which was cool. Also, is Nick Jacobs going to take him up on the offer? He offered Nick Jacobs to come in. You got to come in and see how I go through these, because Nick Jacobs asked how many people are on your board. And he answered, well, I knew somebody was going to ask me that. So I went and asked, and we have 221 players on our board. And he's like, and just how we rank these things, you got to come in, just to see the process.
There.
Yeah, Nick, you're just going to you're going to slow play this thing? Nick, you're going to get in there, man. Come on. I mean, Brett Veach, that is a legally binding verbal agreement, if you ask me. He invited, just show up and, hello, Brett. I'm here to go through your process of your board 1 through 221.
And I'll have a follow-up question. What time?
And Brad, I'll also have a follow-up for Brett Veach as we're hanging out here in this war room, this draft room. 913-912-4810 is the text line to join us to be a part of the show. 913-912-4810 if you want to weigh in and be a part of the conversation. So we'll talk some Chiefs today. We'll definitely talk some Royals today as well, as the Royals drop 2 of 3 to the Baltimore Orioles. They are now 2-4 this year against the Orioles. I do want to get into some of the conversation that people are having about, well, how good are the Royals because they beat up on the White Sox, and what have they done outside of just simply playing and going 5-1 against the White Sox? Well, I can tell you what they've done outside of that. It's 8-8 outside of the White Sox, which is fine. Those things happen, and you need to beat up on some bad teams. So we'll talk about that. And I also looked at other teams to see what they've done so far this year against sub 500 teams and teams that are over 500 to compare it to what the Royals are. It's easy to look at the Royals and go, all right, this team's 10-3 against sub 500 teams, and they're 3-6 against teams over 500. Okay. How does that relate to other teams that are winning in baseball? So we'll do that as well. 913-912-4810. Josh Kaiser joins us at noon, One Royal Way podcast, and we'll talk some Royals with him. Mick Schaefer at 1 o'clock, KSHB 41 Sports Director, Learn, Funniest, and Best. All right, so they dropped 2 of 3 to the Orioles, the Royals do. Is it odd that I come out of this series feeling like the offense really struggling, even though they scored 16 runs on Friday and Saturday? Is that it? It's weird, right? Does anybody else echo that sentiment? Because it almost felt like the 7-0 lead on Saturday, any offense that was almost got you there was going to be viewed in a way as sort of wasted runs, and you sort of put them aside. And then it's like, yeah, but they scored 0 yesterday when they were sort of in the game there and they had opportunities. Am I alone in feeling like they score 7 runs on Saturday, they score 9 on Friday, but yet there's still a feel that I have of, good God, this offense is really, really struggling and laboring.
How many times have I said the roller coaster?
3 times. I've been
take a drink.
Track.
This is now the take. This is now the take a drink for me.
Yeah, roller coaster.
It's who they are. You're not going to see many 4-run, 5-run games, in my opinion. You're not going to see a whole bunch of that. This is who they are. They're very streaky, very inconsistent, fairly top-heavy, which is kind of interesting to say. I mean, they get some professional at-bats, if you will, from Adam Frazier, has more walks and strikeouts. But he's just weak contact.
Yeah.
Hunter Renfroe hasn't done much. He's not running into any balls. Yeah. Kyle Isabel's a black hole at the bottom of the lineup. Michael Garcia has been absolutely atrocious. So you're stuck with Bobby Witt, who's been great, and who's a little bit on a colder stretch compared to his torrid start. You have Salvador Perez, who is apparently in his prime. We all knew that this is Salvi. This is
right.
his prime.
It's 28-year-old Salvi right here.
Vinny is absolutely raking. MJ Melendez was real hot, then real cold, and then he's okay.
Hopefully water will find a level for him and somewhere in between to be a little more consistent rather than a 10 and a 2. But batting like a 10 and then batting like a 2.
But that's kind of what this offense is predicated on. He's either going to be a 10 or a 1. Hunter Renfroe is a 10 or a 1.
I would like him to be a 10 every once in a while just to show that he's got potential.
He's been
like
a 3 or a 1.
I was going to say he's like a 3 or 4 or a 1.
But there's just so many inconsistencies with this lineup that you are going to get this. And so I was actually talking with him to an extent before the show started with Jack.
Okay.
Before the show started, I was talking with Jack, and I go, I don't know how to judge this series where it's like, okay, they lost, but there's some positives.
See, that's how I am too.
And also there's just this glaring hole. And why I text you, I go, I got to talk about Kyle Isabel because it's unplayable right now.
It's very feast or famine, I would say. It's boom or bust with this offense. And it makes sense because you look at the top of the lineup. Garcia's hitting sub 200. Then you have Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, Salvador Perez all hitting their tail off right now. MJ kind of in the in-between. He had a pretty good home series against Baltimore. And then it's a black hole, not just with Kyle Isbell right now at the bottom of the lineup. There's just not much. I would say Nelson Velasquez isn't a black hole, but you have Michael Massey's just back. When it's not Massey, Frazier's not hitting enough right now. Garrett Hampson's not hitting enough right now. Isbell's not hitting enough right now. And so that makes a lot of sense why when they play well, when the offense puts up 7 or 8 runs, everybody's hitting. But when there's that struggle like yesterday against a pitcher who's let's be honest, not very good. Cole Irvin had a 6.75 ERA.
fine.
But for some reason, it's those soft-throwing lefties that have always given the Royals problems. And right now, I just kind of feel like that's been the issue, where you can't get even 5 guys on an off night, an off day, hitting well. When it's not going well, or those top 3 guys, Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny, Perez, when they're not hitting, you're not going to see the other guys hit. At least right now. It's early on, and you can be fortunate for those 9-run outputs. I mean, Friday night was a lot of fun. There was a moment that things got close, and then Melendez, put the game back out of reach. And then on Saturday, Cole Reagans gives up 7. He's out before the second inning. And Corbin Burns had a shutout going in the 6th inning. But then when they caught fire, it was like everybody that went to the plate, you're like, they're probably getting on some way, somehow. Yesterday, when I'm watching the game, I'm like, it's going to take an error. It's going to take a bleeder. It's going to take a mistake. And they never really had any good chance to take advantage in that game.
What makes it even more interesting and kind of just going to that, the only guys with hits yesterday, Bobby Witt was 1 for 4. Vinny was 1 for 4. Salvi had 2 walks.
5 walks in his last 3 games.
And MJ was 1 for 3. You obviously had Fermin and Isbel both who had a hit. But, you're looking around at what happened. It was the same, basically, 3 guys. Again, they had their off games, but everyone else was just a black hole. Those guys' off games will at least get you on base once a game. The other dudes, you don't have that to fall back on.
The part that I look at, and they win 9-4 on Friday night, and it just felt like there was such an opportunity in front of them, right? When you win on Friday and you get that game with Marsh on the mound, and you go, all right, now you got Reagans and Lugo the next couple of days. Win one of those, and you took the series from the Orioles, and now you've split with the Orioles. You're 3-3 against a really good, talented team. If you can find a way to get one of these next 2 games where Lugo has been pitching great and going out there and getting a decision pretty much every time out, and that decision being a win, and Cole Reagans is your best. And then the second inning happens where he just can't get out of the inning, and 2 out hit, and 2 out hit, and 2 out hit, and this is the last guy, 2 strikes, 2 out hit, and then he's pulled, and somehow the Royals end up fighting their way back and making that thing a close game and having the tying run, on base, the tying run at third, having that opportunity with Nelson Velasquez up there and bases loaded, down by 1, 2 outs. And so I don't want to dismiss Saturday. Yesterday sort of felt like one of those to where, you just simply got beat. Those days are going to happen. The offense wasn't hitting. They get 2 runs here. They get a couple runs in this inning. They get another run there, and it's like, oh, that's 5-0. But the offense, it didn't feel like they were really going to get anything rolling. But you also didn't have just an avalanche like you saw on Saturday with the 7-0. And so they fought back. And I find myself battling like the angel and the devil on the shoulder of what's the meaning of Saturday? What's the meaning of winning the way they did on Friday, battling back from 7-0 and having it 8-7 with bases loaded in the 8th inning, to where we are viewing this team differently. We are viewing this team in a level of, can they compete? Can they win the division? Can they be in contention or at least close to the hunt in August and September? But also, it's Major League Baseball, so moral victories, how quickly are those sort of thrown out the window? And that's where the angel and the devil's going, it's not a moral victory. If we're talking about this team being serious, if we're really saying this team is good enough, then don't fall behind 7-0. And battling back is nice, but you also had a bonehead play. You had a toot plan at third base by a guy who makes outs at the plate, and then when he gets on, decides to make an out as well. You have bases loaded and 2 outs, and you get a strikeout that happens. And so it's like, that's the devil part of it. And the angel is, dude, this is, we've been watching this team just get punked for a while against good teams. And this is a team that showed how they can play, and they've been in contention to take both series against the Orioles, which is a really good, really talented team. And I fight that from Saturday night specifically because I don't want to just have it all rainbows and sunshine. But down 7-0, the bullpen gives up 2 runs. the rest of the game against the Orioles and at least allows the Royals to have an opportunity to fight back and get in there. Where do you guys fall on that? Because I'm more in the line of giving benefit of the doubt this early in this year when it's like, okay, it's kind of go time. All right, it's go time. They're 22 games into the season. This isn't game 123 where they are one game out of the Guardians and, you came close to winning. That was fun. It's game 22 in a season where you go, okay, now it's time to see what this team can do.
Dog, they won 50 games last year.
Uh-huh.
This is a huge step in the right direction. If you come out of this just pissed off, that's on you.
Well, maybe the pissed off is how much or how excited you are for the season and how you feel like this team
sure.
could be.
And it's awesome, but I still think when you look at this roster, we're not sitting here going, this is a 90-win team. This is a team that you hope competes and
gets to 500.
Gets to 500,
Yeah.
which might be enough to win the AL Central. They've done that. And again, that you mentioned that, beating up on bad teams. That's what you're supposed to do. You're going to probably go around 500, maybe just under against the elite teams. Baltimore is an elite team. They might be the best team in the AL. They're phenomenal, them and the Rangers. Like, it happens. Reagans has been good all season long. Do we all expect him to never have a blow-up game? He had one, and the offense battled back. We would have seen him roll over and lose 13-0 in past years. I was at the game a few years ago, and they lost to the Rangers like 24-1. It was 110 degrees. All I left with was a burn. It was miserable. Like, this did not happen in this game against, again, one of the best top-to-bottom lineups in baseball. Again, yes, no moral victories. We're not handing out oranges post-game, but we can also have some nuance when talking about it.
I think Sterling's exactly right with last year. This team only won 56 games. And, winning is going to make you forget last year, previous years a lot of the time. And, early on this year, the Royals have been good enough where a lot of people have bought into, not just are they good, we feel like they can win a division. But in baseball, of course, those games like Saturday, 7-run second innings, those games like Sunday, you lose 5-0. They're going to happen. I mean, right, we all thought the Dodgers were going to win 140 games. They were 12-11 going into yesterday. So good teams can lose games. I'm not saying the Dodgers and Royals are on the same level, but I do think there's an element to this where throughout 162, you're not going to see the Royals go from a 106-loss team to just beating really good teams easily. Now, Friday was very interesting because your 5-starter once again shoves against one of the best lineups in baseball, and you go, well, this will be easy. Reagan's on the mound tomorrow, and then you have Seth Lugo on Sunday. Hell, why not sweep this team? But it shows you a lot of the times that, and I thought this in the Minnesota series, I thought this in the first go-around with Baltimore, those teams are going to show you where you're at right now. It doesn't mean you're going to be there long-term, and I thought Vinny Pasquantino said it great in the postgame yesterday. He's like, I wish I could come away and say we feel really proud of this series, but we felt like we should have taken this series. And the players are not looking at it as, well, come on, guys. We lost 106 last year. We're playing really good ball. I think they really look at themselves as we're one of the better teams in the American League. We want to win this division, and we're not going to parade around, hey, we almost beat Baltimore on Saturday. That's a really good team. I think they felt like they could hang with them all 6 games. Now, next time you'd see Baltimore would be in the playoffs, but, you have to feel confident right now. You're 13-9. Baltimore's out of the way, right?
Yeah.
You do not have to see Baltimore again, maybe ever. Whether you miss the
Playoffs.
playoffs or if Baltimore gets bounced by somebody else, you wouldn't have to worry about them. But, honestly, I looked at the series last year. Baltimore humiliated. The Royals won 1 game, so I can't even believe they won 1 game. That series in Camden was probably the ugliest series I saw of that team. It was awful to watch. And, this early on in a month that usually buries this team, I thought with the exception of Sunday, they were right there every single time. And I'm not saying you celebrate moral victories, but I just don't walk away going, well, here we go again. Now they're going to lose, 5 of their next 6.
Yeah, I think there's a nuance, as Sterling said, to that, from the here we go again, this is the same old Royals versus, hey, everything's great and they came close to winning, so we should all celebrate them coming close to winning. I think there is definitely conversation to have there. And the Vinny Pasquantino quote, I think, is perfect because it really doesn't matter what we think. It doesn't matter what our perception is, our feeling is around this team. It matters what the feeling is in that clubhouse, and they come away going, dude, we gave away 2 different series to Baltimore. We gave away both series to Baltimore. We lost 6-4 where we gave up, 4 runs. We lost 4-3 where we gave up a couple of runs late. We had opportunities to win both of those games. That was in Baltimore. And then We had a 7, burger put on us in the second inning, but we were right there. We had an opportunity there late in the game to come back and show that at least we're close to this particular team. And if this is one of the best teams in baseball and we feel like we let a couple series get away, then what does that say about us? It matters to me what's in the clubhouse, what's the feel in the clubhouse, because if they come away going, dude, we were close, that's cool. Because I think Royals of the past would be like, oh, man, we almost won that game. That's cool. That's pretty neat. But also, like, what did I do? Where's my batting average at? What's this? And it's easy for Vinny, who's going really well right now, to talk about the team aspect, the bigger picture of it all. But I found myself conflicted. I ended up sort of going to bed on Saturday night going, I feel pretty good. It's not necessarily celebrating a moral victory, but in putting it into perspective of where this team was last year, what we thought of this team this year, how good Baltimore is expected to be, and how good that freaking lineup is. When they got guys that are batting almost 300 up and down the lineup, and you've got, Royals lineup that has, 4 guys batting 200 or below in it. It's you just look at that and it's like, well, there should be a bigger gap there, but there wasn't. There wasn't like necessarily a bigger gap there between the two teams when the Royals had opportunities to win pretty much 5 of the 6. Yesterday didn't feel like they had much of an opportunity to win. That was just one of those games where you lost. You go out there and you just lose that game. That team was better that day, and you get ready for the next series.
Where do you land right now on Seth Lugo? Because we talked with Les Norman last week. We tried to – the underlying numbers have not been in any sort of collaboration with what the actual numbers have been put up. Again, what matters are the real numbers, right? Hypothetical numbers don't matter as much when you keep putting up real numbers. But at some point, it can be a good look ahead of, okay, is this sustainable? Now, again, Lugo, the numbers last night aren't horrendous. Was it 5 1/3, 4 runs given up?
4 runs, yeah.
But dude was getting shelled. Garrett Hampson saved him on that one to center field. That was phenomenal. Hunter Renfroe actually saved a run or two with the sliding catch and then proceeded to the following inning take a bad route that I think he probably could have made a plan. But again, that ball was also torched. I'm sitting here going, is the other shoe going to fall for Seth Lugo? Because it does seem like he's given up a lot of hard-hit contact.
I don't think he's a guy that had a 1 ERA. I also don't think he's a 5-inning, 4-earned-run guy either. So I think yesterday is probably I shouldn't say the bottom because Cole Reagans gave up 7 runs in 2 innings, but I think yesterday is below sort of the water level for Seth Lugo, where the previous 4 starts is the top of the mountain for Seth Lugo, because he recorded 16 outs yesterday and only 1 strikeout. That's difficult to do, especially against that lineup, and to get out of there without getting hit around and giving up damage.
I think the only problem you can look at with Seth Lugo is that he doesn't strike out a lot of guys. So when you face a lineup as loaded as that, you unfortunately are going to need to be able to strike guys out. And even Cole Reagans, a strikeout pitcher, gave up 7 runs in 1 inning. I mean, you can put into perspective that Baltimore lineup. I mean, the number 7 and 8 hitter hit combined 830 feet of home runs and back-to-back, right? It just is a lineup that is tough for everybody.
7 and 8 hitters batting 370 and 333.
I mean, there's no let-up, right? And I think I look at it and I go, there was a leadoff triple. Now, they got out of it. But anytime there's a leadoff triple and you look at the options you have out there, like Seth Lugo's not going to be the guy that just says, all right, I'm coming straight at you, striking out 2, getting a pop-up. Now, he got out of it. A little bit of luck involved there. There was a hard hit ball to second base. There was a pop up there. They had some good fortune there. Whereas against Baltimore, if you've got a guy on second, nobody out, that run's probably coming in most of the time if you can't strike guys out. But Seth Lugo last year had 17 quality starts in 26 of his starts all year. So I do think that's closer to what you're going to get when he faces a lesser lineup than that, which I rank all the lineups in baseball. There's probably 29 worse lineups out there than what he'll see. That might have been the toughest lineup that Marsh, Reagans, and Lugo will see all season long. And that I'm putting them up against the Dodgers. I'm putting them up against Atlanta. Right now, it's so loaded right there. And for Lugo, I'm not overly concerned. And the same, I'm not overly concerned for Reagans because sometimes you're not going to have your best stuff. And I didn't think Lugo had terrible stuff yesterday. When you can't put them away, they're going to put one ball in play at 112 miles an hour, and sometimes the ball's going to get wet in the fountains.
14 strikeouts in 31 innings this year. Last year was 140 strikeouts in 146. So again, not necessarily
so it's less
decent last year, but he's not a strikeout pitcher. What does help him is he's again, a lot of those have been solo shots or 2-run at
And
the
he gets
most.
a lot of soft contact. That's
a lot
that's
of
what
soft
he's-
contact.
That's what he's doing. And the Astros don't have a terrible lineup. They've got a pretty good lineup, and he went 6 innings and gave up only 2 earned runs against that team. But yeah, the strikeouts. If you're not striking guys out against that lineup, like the Orioles, it's going to be difficult. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. I do want to look at the Royals versus the teams that are above 500, sub 500, and then I looked at 4 other teams, just sort of grabbing some teams from the American League, 2 others in the Central, and a couple from the East that I looked at to see how that compares to the Royals when we have the conversation of, okay, well, how good are they because they're 10-3 against sub 500 teams? Okay, what are other teams doing? We'll do that next. All right, we'll talk some Chiefs coming up at 11 o'clock. Brett Veach talking on Friday. You heard that right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. And also he talked with Kevin Harvick, the Harvick's Happy Hour podcast, where a clip going around of him talking about DK Metcalf and saying that the biggest mistake of my life is McCole Hardman on this team. No, that's not what he said. That's not what he said. Fans would have loved for him to say that, but that's not what he said. So we'll hear that clip as well. 913-912-4810 is the text line to join us. I want to talk about the Royals and the record against sub-500 teams and teams over 500, and then look at other teams and just see how they compare to it. Maybe it's better, maybe it's worse, maybe they're sort of where they should be in Major League Baseball. So looking at the Royals against teams that are sub-500, they are 10-3 on the season. Against teams above 500, they are 3-6 on the season. That includes the Mets, the Orioles. So one series against the Mets and then the 6 games against the Orioles. They've lost all 3 of those series. They haven't been swept, but they went 1-2 in all 3 of those series. So they're 3-6. The other 3 teams I looked at 4 teams. So I'll do Detroit since it's one of the teams that's below them, right? So Detroit is 8-5 against teams that are below 500. And they're 4-5 against teams that are 500 or above. So they also have a losing record. They're 4-5, Royals are 3-6. But the Royals are better against the sub-500 teams. Now let's look at teams that are better or ahead of the Royals. Baltimore. Baltimore's 5-1 against teams that are sub-500. They're 5-1. They're 9-6 against teams that are above 500. They're still a 9-6 team when they're playing teams that are above 500. Now
they're on the AL East. Every team's above 500.
That's right. That's right. They would be 5-4, right? Because they've got 4 wins against the Royals and just 2 losses. They'd be 5-4. They're 5-4 against teams above 500, not named the Royals. But they're 9-6 against teams that are above 500 because the Royals are. They're 13-9, so they count. So Baltimore, pretty good record against teams that are above 500. Cleveland, we mentioned the Royals are 10-3 against teams that are below 500. Cleveland is 10-1 against teams that are below 500. But to their credit, they're 6-4 against teams that are above 500. They lost the series to the Yankees. They won 1 game in that 3-game set, and then they took 2 of 3 from Seattle, and they took 3 of 4 from Boston. So, I mean, that's not any – you don't go into Boston and win 3 of 4 and get lucky doing it. So, Cleveland has shown that they're a good enough team. They're not just eating on scrubby teams, and that's why they've got the 3-game lead in the division right now. Taking 3 of 4 from Boston, taking 2 of 3 from the Mariners, and finding a way to win 1 of 2 in New York. And then one thing that stood out to me was that Baltimore swept Boston, and Cleveland took 3 of 4 from Boston. So I'm like, all right, so what's Boston then? Because they're 13-10, so they're above 500. So Boston against sub-500 teams, 7-2, and against teams that are 500 or above are 6-8. So they're a little bit like the Royals. Their profile is a little bit Royals-esque. 7-2 against sub-500, 6-8 against teams that are 500 or above, and they are 1-6 against the Guardians and Orioles combined are the Red Sox. And they sit 13-10. Now, maybe people in Boston are going, well, this team's only beating up on bad teams, and that's, they're not good enough, especially when you're looking at what the Yankees are doing. So if you're in Boston, that's probably an issue right now because they've been awesome, and the Yankees are beating everybody. Sub 500, above 500, doesn't matter. There's no difference between that. But I think what we're also seeing, though, is the Royals might be a little more extreme example of what, Cleveland's 10-1 against sub 500, but they're also 6-4 against above 5. Baltimore's 5-1 against sub 500, but they're also 9-6 against teams above 500.
I think Boston's actually a really good comp. They I think struggled a little bit last year. They tried to rebuild a little bit, if you will. They've had a lot of positives with the pitching staff, like Cutter Crawford, who's on the IL right now.
Qatar Crawford.
Qatar. Well, he's on my fantasy baseball team. I was like, wow, okay. He's on my fantasy baseball team. I should know. Like he's got a .66 ERA. That's
I don't think Sterling got the joke.
Qatar,
Yes,
the country.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, great.
Brian Bello. He's been great. He's been their young ace, if you will. He's taken that next step. Tanner Hawk is a 1.35.
Yeah.
Garrett Whitlock, 1.96. I think they're a little bit Royals-esque where they might be outperforming a little bit with the pitching staff where they currently are. They've had a little bit of bullpen issues as well. Then offensively, Rafael Devers is still in a little bit of a slump. Tyler O'Neill's been actually incredible. So if you want to talk about a veteran signing that.
Is he back from that collision in left field? Is he back yet? Because I know he left the game and missed a couple games.
I don't know if he is back at this point.
He's
that
their
was
Hunter
pretty
Renfroe.
Yeah.
He's their Hunter Renfroe. Renfroe was hitting.
I'd love for
The Royals were interested in O'Neill too. I think they were one of the finalists, and then Boston, I guess, gave him more money.
But
nice.
Tristan Cassis, whatever his last name is, he's I think a little bit banged up right now. But he's their Vinny Pasquantino to an extent, young first baseman who absolutely rakes. I think if you want to look at a comp this year and try and say where do the Royals stack up as far as their rebuild, I think Boston is a really good comparison based on the type of players they both possess.
The unfortunate part for Boston, too, is they play in the AL East right
Correct.
now. They're dealing with New York. They're dealing with Baltimore. And they got to worry about Toronto and Tampa Bay. Right.
Yeah.
Boston is, I would say by definition, the worst team in that division, whereas if they were in the AL Central, right, they're right up there with
They'd
the
be a half game
Royals and the
behind the Royals
Guardians.
right now.
I do think with the Guardians, they are a team that is always, it just feels like they've always given the Royals problems. Even when the Royals in 14 and 15, felt like Cleveland was that team that just was a thorn in their side. And this year, I am curious how long they can take this because I don't want to, poke fun at them for not playing good competition because the Royals have played the White Sox 6 times and the Guardians have played the White Sox and the A's 6 times. So 9 of their games this year have been against really bad teams. But as you mentioned, they played the Yankees. They played Boston in Fenway. They get Boston now in Cleveland this coming week. And they've already built a 3-game lead in this division if you're into April scoreboard watching. But I do think you feel, if you are the Royals right now, I think you feel good that Cleveland is the team ahead of you instead of somebody like Minnesota. I think you look at Minnesota now 8 games back, I think, of
5
Cleveland.
games behind the Royals are 5 games clear of the Twins right now.
If it was Minnesota leading this division, I'd go, okay, that was the team that was supposed to win this division, and they are still leading it. And it shows that they're going to go the distance here. Cleveland, though they have really exceeded expectations like the Royals have, like Detroit has, you've got that unknown of they could always fall off. They lost Shane Bieber. How long is that rotation going to be able to carry? How long can this offense play this well? Josh Naylor, you have Andres Jimenez. You've got Steven Kwan's really good, but Jose Ramirez, of course. And then you have Bo Naylor. I mean, there's a lot of guys. Will Brennan, local kid here, went to Blue Valley and then K-State. Like, they've got some guys, at times like the Royals, that are maybe overachieving their numbers. But 16-6 is 16-6. But whereas Boston is 13-10, one or half a game less or worse than the Royals, I think that the worst team in the AL East, where the Royals right now are seen as the second best team in the Central with a little bit better record.
Yeah, the Shane Bieber thing is going to be impactful because you're talking about 28 starts this season that he's not going to have. He started 2 games, and if you're looking at a 30, starts for the season for a guy like Shane Bieber, and just to tell you how the start he was off to, in the 2 games that he pitched in, 12 total innings, 20 Ks, 1 walk for Shane Bieber.
Is that good, Jason?
No earned runs. No earned runs. He had 11 total base runners in those 12 innings and 20 Ks for Shane Bieber. It's 28 games that you won't have out there through the course of the season that he would have been on the mound for the Guardians. That's crucial, but it doesn't mean the Royals won't have that happen to them at some point this year. It's happening early to the Guardians with Shane Bieber, and it sucks. It goes along with all the conversations we were having about Strider and then Bieber and Yuri Perez and just the different guys that are going under the knife. Although Spencer Strider, turns out he didn't have Tommy John, that they went in to repair the UCL, but it was just a bone that was in there that was messing things up. He's still out for the season, but they think he's going to be fine to start next year, which is weird. It's like you've got structural damage to the UCL. We go in there and go, oh, no, you don't. Actually, you don't. It's just this bone that's pushing against it. Wouldn't the MRI? Like, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor.
The second opinion.
I'm not a doctor. I don't.
Wrong opinions.
You know how terrifying it would be if you go in this dude's elbow is just open. You're like, wow, we blinked up. We were wrong.
Just gonna sew this back up. You're good to go. Once this suture heals, you're back out there. 15-day IL for this guy is ready to go. But he still had to have that taken out. Like there was some issues there in his elbow. So I don't even know what's going on there with that. But losing Bieber is significant. And if the Royals can stay healthy, that would be awesome. It's not likely to happen because The Royals starting 5, you're probably going to need at least 3 more guys in the minors for starters that can step up. Or maybe not even the minors. Maybe Jordan Lyles is the first guy off the bench that you throw back into the starting rotation if somebody goes down. And then you start to look deeper into the minors and find some guys that deeper as in like to AAA, not deeper into single A or anything like that, but deeper into your depth.
You mean the guy that has a 0 ERA?
That's right. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, baby.
That's what I'm talking about. You know who doesn't have a 0 ERA?
Back.
Cole Reagans doesn't have a 0 ERA. You know
Highest
who does?
ERA in the rotation,
Yep,
by
you
the
know
way.
who does? Jordan Lyles, 0 ERA. I'm just saying, those are straight facts, homie. That's what
That's
those
not
are.
fiction.
No.
That's fact.
It's fact, not
Fact.
fiction. We'll take a time out. We'll come back and maybe factor fiction on what they do with Kyle Isbell. We'll do that next. This hour talked a lot of Royals here. Kyle Isbell, 186, getting on base at 213, but he is slugging 254. Oh wait, no, that's not his on. Oh, that's a slugging 254. Yeah, that's not his on base percentage. Isn't that his batting average? 254 is not. It's a slugging percentage. But he is OPSing at 467, so that's good. If you're into that sort of thing. When do they eject? If it keeps up like this, I mean, obviously, if it changes, they don't eject. But they love his defense. I mean, you heard J.J. Piccolo in the offseason say this was an evaluation season. We wanted to see if Bobby Witt can play short. We wanted to see if Kyle Isbell can stick in center. It's odd that was the second thing they were looking for last year. That stood out to me. But the guy's OPSing at 467. He's getting on base at 213. You can't play defense nearly good enough to make up for that big of a black hole.
Dog, his career on base percentage is 276.
So he's struggling this year. He's playing under. So
But
it's only going
like
to get better.
It's like not even
So it's
that
only going to
much.
get better, is what you're saying.
This is my point. I never understood when people are like, well, what if he plays a league average bat? I go, what has he ever shown you that he's going to be a league average bat? The defense is awesome for a fourth outfielder. It's Gerard Dyson without wheels. He's not even fast.
When do they eject? Or do they eject?
They should have last year.
Are they so? Hey, they wanted to see if he could play center. He could play center. They didn't say anything about can he play center and swing the bat like a center fielder.
Dairon Blanco is the same.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing more Dairon Blanco in there.
He's 27.
Yeah.
It's not. He's 23.
I have a hard time imagining that they're going to eject in April, unless they lose 6 or 7 in a row, and he can never get it going. Because honestly, as much as I hate to say it, if the Royals keep winning on this trend, and you look up and they're 18-13, and Kyle Isbell's still not hitting, they may attribute some of their success to his defense in center field. They very well could.
Yeah, I agree. I think they would.
That's why fans aren't going to want to hear it. But if they're winning, they're not going to hit the eject button 30 games into the year.
I also wonder, if he struggles like this, and Renfroe continues to struggle, and Garcia continues to struggle, who's the most likely that you're taking out of your lineup to put somebody in? I know they love Isbell in center field, but who's waiting to come? Drew Waters is OPSing almost 1,000 right now in AAA. It's not the big leagues. Maybe he comes up and, is just barely better than Isbell, but not as good a defense. But at some point, if he keeps swinging like this and hitting extra base hits and getting on base and playing center field for AAA every game, at some point you do have to examine, are you a better team by bringing Drew Waters up to play a lesser center field, but you get a better bat and hopefully better base running? Because that was absurd on Saturday.
Why do we act like Drew Waters is this bum center fielder? He's a very good defensive.
Yeah. No, I don't think he
sucks.
sucks.
He's not as good as Kyle Isbell, but even if you look at some of the underlying analytical numbers, pretty damn good.
Yeah,
5 runs, 93rd percentile with a better bat.
He did get pulled though last week for manager decision, so that's
Eaton.
not.
So is he loafing or what? They brought in Eaton.
He was out the next night too, so it wasn't like he was dogging it to first. There had to have been a bigger deal there.
Something going on. He's played every game since then, but yeah, he did, which is I think only 2. He's played every game since then. It's one game. Show me the lie. Where's the lie in that? He got pulled from a game and got benched, but he returned to the lineup and he's been there ever since. It's been 2 innings. That's what I'm saying. We'll see. I'm getting close. I know it's April still for another 8 days or whatever, but I'm getting closer to ejecting. Saturday night sent me over the edge.
The Zone is presented by Guaranteed Foods, delivering all natural food to Midwestern families since 1958. Enjoy healthier food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
All right, we continue hanging out on this Monday edition of The Zone. Jason Anderson with you, Sterling Holmes, Jack Johnson, Dylan Michaels. We'll talk with Josh Kaiser coming up at noon. Some Royals discussion with Josh Kaiser. They get ready for the Toronto Blue Jays, a 4-game set starting tonight, heading until Thursday, a little getaway day on Thursday. And then they, like everybody else, they will be heading to Detroit. All eyes will be on Detroit on Thursday night as the draft takes place there, and the Chiefs with the last pick in the first round. It's simultaneously not ideal and ideal. It's great. It's the best position to draft in, except for draft night.
You know what would be even worse? 30.
Oh, 30 or 30. Yeah, 30. 30 is the worst. You're right, because then you don't even win your conference.
29 and 30.
Yep.
29 and 30, they're two worst spots.
You're right about that. 30 is no bueno. 30's not great. And they drafted 30 with Karlaftis, right? Karlaftis was 30 because that was their original pick, and then the Dolphins pick is what they traded up with Trent McDuffie to get him at 21. So they have had that, and that sucked. That was not fun. But they have been picking in the 30s for a while. The Chiefs have, so they've got the at the same time worst and best pick in the NFL draft, and we'll see what happens with quarterbacks, et cetera. That'll take place in the top 4, top 5 picks, and you know, if McCarthy goes number 4, if a team really wants McCarthy and he doesn't go in the top 4, and then they trade with the Chargers or whatever, or he's sitting there at number 5, and does Harbaugh, can he contain himself? All right, I'm trading Herbert so I can get McCarthy. Does he dare take Marvin Harrison Jr., that Michigan man, take the Ohio State receiver? Oh, there's so many different storylines at number 5. I can't wait. So that's Thursday night. The Chiefs will be picking.
My birthday.
Oh, really?
Come on, yeah.
Well, happy birthday.
Yeah, there's so many storylines.
There's a ton of storylines.
The
quarterbacks,
on
the tackles, the wide receivers, the Chiefs draft, Sterling's birthday. Royals are wrapping up against the Blue Jays that day. Then they head on the road to face off against the Tigers, a team that currently is a game behind them in the stand. All of those are massive, massive storylines on Thursday.
Huge.
Huge, quickly. Let's hear from Brett Veach. We heard the press conference live on Friday, but there are some things to talk about, discuss, react to with Brett Veach. And let's just go ahead and do the crazy thing and start with clip number 1. With Brett Veach, he talks about the offensive tackles, the wide receivers. I think there are a few things here that I was able to glean from listening to Brett Veach. in these different clips we'll play. But here he is talking about the offensive tackle and the wide receiver value that's in this particular draft.
I think the draft in general has some positional depth, although it is funny when we're looking at the numbers and the general consensus is this is a deep O-line class or this is a deep D-line class or what have you. It's not necessarily true for us, I think, sometimes, because like for the tackle position, I think once you get past like pick 35 or 40, most of those guys are gone. So if you're picking in the top 10, it's a great offensive line class. If you're picking in the top 15, it's a great offensive line class. If you're picking 32 and 64, you got a shot maybe here or there. So I think that goes into, the additional work we put in and putting a strategy together and what guys might be worth a move, depending on how it all plays out and, what other positions are going to provide top end value if say an O lineman or receiver isn't there. And, do you go corner? Do you go defensive line? I think that there are some interesting pockets there. So I think the good thing is that, like every year, there's a lot of good players, and it's just a matter of working on our board, our system, given the picks we have and the potential moves we can make.
Okay, so there's a lot there. I think there's a lot there from Brett Veach in that particular clip. He talked about the tackle position, which tackle and wide receiver, so much of our conversation has gone about that. And then, where would they go if it's not tackle or wide receiver? He mentioned specifically two other positions, cornerback, defensive line. Like if it's not a tackle or wide receiver, cornerback, defensive line, et cetera. But for him to talk about the tackle position, like people talk about, it's a really deep tackle position that, but once you get past 35 or 40, then, those guys are gone. It's a great tackle draft if you're in the top 10 or top 15. But if you're in picking 32 and 64, you've got a shot. And then talked about, what they would do with guys that might be worth a move. So there's a lot there on where he views the top tackles are 10 to 15, which tells me that if there's a tackle somewhere that they think should be gone in the top 15 and he's there around 20, 21, 22, like McDuffie, that would be something they would consider making a move for. And sitting at 32, as he's saying, you've got a shot, because 32 to 40 is sort of that pocket, which also could mean maybe there's a trade back if they're sitting there and there's a couple of guys that are available and they're going, well, these guys are still in this pocket of tackles that we like in the top 40 or so or something like that. We can still trade back and get one of these two or three guys. We're good with any of these three guys if they're on the board there. We're going to trade back 4 spots. Not everybody's going to take a tackle because maybe this team took a tackle the first round or whatever. So we feel confident we can get one of these three guys there before pick 40. But after that, it's pretty much done, which tells me that if the Chiefs are looking for tackle, they need to do it in the first round.
Well, and that was my main takeaway was it's a deep wide receiver class, and it's a solid tackle class until a certain point. And then my main thought was, I think the same as yours, where if you want a tackle and you want a starting caliber left tackle, it's a trade up. And that means if the Chiefs are to trade up, it's probably not going to be for a wide receiver. It's probably not going to be for a cornerback. It's not going to be for a defensive lineman. It would be for a tackle. That was my main takeaway. Yeah. If all of a sudden you see the Chiefs trading up and you're do-do-do, and it's like 22, right? You're now on the clock.
Din, 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 whatever it is.
Thank you. Yeah. I was
trying to think of
completely butchered it. For some reason, mine was like an off-brand ESPN Sports Center. But it's going to be for a tackle. That was my thought process. If a trade-up is going to happen for Kansas City, it will be for a tackle, not for a wide receiver.
I think Sterling will share this idea that I have because you're a big fan of Wanya Morris. But if they are to trade up, use resources to get an offensive tackle in the first round, not that the Wanya Morris pick becomes useless because he's still a swing tackle. Somebody can get banged up, he has to come in. But, man, I kind of feel like you've abandoned the development at that point because Wanya Morris wasn't a 6th-round pick or a 7th-round pick. He was a day 2 pick. And, he did play a little bit last year. But if the plan is you're going to get your starting left tackle in the first round, I just don't know if there is a true great starting left tackle even in the 20s. I think if you are to draft a tackle in the first round for them to be a day 1 starter, you're probably going to have to be in the top 15, which the Chiefs just simply can't move up that high. So to me, I don't know if it makes too much sense to empty resources to go up to get a guy that maybe still has to win the job in camp, right? If you're going to move up, use resources to get a tackle in the first round, I would like to say they are penciled in day 1 starter. Don't even worry about Wanya Morris.
They better be.
But yeah,
if you're gonna spend that the resources it would take, as you're saying, to get up to 15 to draft somebody, they're a day one starter.
Yeah.
It can't be anything else.
And I just don't know if there is that guy outside of even the top 10 at this point. So for me, I still feel like the Chiefs view Wanye Morris as the guy that can go into camp and win that job. Maybe you do get competition for him, but I just don't know if it makes sense to use kind of the limited resources you have to move up to get a guy that I do not believe would be a locked-in day one starter.
Well, it's one of the things I've talked about Kingsley Suamataia before so many times, is because he's a guy that has the traits to be a starting left tackle. He's more of a developmental guy, and if you come out of the draft with your first-round pick, or maybe you trade back and get him early second round, and then you sign Donovan Smith, and then Wanya can be your swing tackle still developing while your first-rounder is developing, and you don't feel like, well, Wanya or Kingsley have to start day number one because those are the options we have, or Lucas Niang, those are the options we have. Donovan Smith did it last year.
Prince Tega sir.
Yeah, that's a good point. Prince is there. They do like Prince. PTG or PTW.
PTW.
PTW. Yeah, PTW. They do like Prince, and
who doesn't like Prince?
I know, right?
Little Red Corvette, it's great.
Right. I mean,
1999.
They were purple raining all over the Ravens.
Let's go crazy.
That's what they were doing without Prince. Didn't even need him that night. But they made the Ravens / Doves cry. So we move past that. They like him. But if Donovan Smith is somebody you sign after the draft, if you get somebody, it doesn't even have to be Kingsley. It could be somebody else that they view that might take a little bit of time. You might have some frustration that's there because it's like, well, your first-round draft pick last year, took some time in developmental. Yeah, you're picking 32nd. You're not picking top 10. If you're picking top 10 and take Joe Alt, he's your starting left tackle right now. Like the mini camp, hey, you're the starting left tackle. But that's just not reality that they're living in right now, because they're living in the reality of a dynasty, which is a fantastic spot to be in. But it means that your first-round draft pick is not going to immediately come in, be a starter, be a day one starter, and a huge, impactful player. They've got a couple of those guys. Trent McDuffie, certainly, even though he got injured game number one. But he's been a guy that since he's hit the field, he's been a really good player. Karlaftis, since he hit the field, especially at pick 30, he's been a really productive and good player for this team. They've got some guys like that, but, typically it's going to be the ones that develop a little bit and take a little bit of time to where they start to really get going and start to, find their footing in the NFL.
And I think you really find in today's day and age, you want the immediate satisfaction. It's way more fun when you see a rookie come out and just tear it up. You're like, we got this guy for 4 more years, 3 more years, whatever it is. But not everyone comes out and is ready game one, week one for the NFL. It is a massive, massive jump. How many players, their rookie seasons, even sometimes their sophomore year, where they struggle and then all of a sudden they turn into a great player. Right now, though, it's the immediate satisfaction of wanting a guy to be a stud. I know Peyton Manning's the obvious answer of going back, but I talked to Jared Goff the other day, and I said, you would have been labeled as a bust your first. He goes, yeah, I would have been a bust. But luckily, I got time to develop, and now look at him in Detroit. He's been, I think, one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL right now. I know we all want FAU to be a stud game one, and he wasn't, obviously. But that's why I'm not worried about him. It's why I think some people, I think, Jack, you're kind of alluding to the same thing. Everyone wanted Wanye Morris to be the guy, this third-round stud starting tackle right away. It takes time. Let him develop. Why have we already given up on guys? Let them mold and grow from college, into the NFL. It's hard.
Let's hear from Brett Veach on the wide receiver class. So we talked about the offensive line there, and we mentioned offensive line, wide receiver. If it's not one of those positions and maybe it's something else, where do you find value, like a cornerback or defensive line? They have some, quote, interesting pockets that he said in that clip. But here he is talking about the wide receiver class.
I think it's one of the deeper classes. The good thing about the wide receiver position, this is typically every year, is they provide depth really 1 through 5, and there's always pockets of players. I think there's a large group of receivers in the first 50 picks, I think, that we have great grades on, and then I think there's another pocket right behind that. I think that is a positive. I think corner, there's some depth middle to later on in the draft. O-lineman, as I mentioned in the opener, it's really good early, And so there'll be a late run on those guys, but it tails off a little bit. I think it's a better defensive line class than we've seen in the past. I think there's some good mid-round depth there. Linebacker, running backs probably a little lighter than years past. So I think O-line, receivers, corners are good hot spots throughout the draft, and that's a good thing because we can use one of each of those.
So again, good information there, and they like to use the term pockets quite often, and said I do agree with him when he's talking about wide receivers, and he's saying, typically every year it's a good draft for wide receivers because that's just what we're seeing now. The best athletes on the field in high school and junior high, whatever, put them at quarterback. Like that was always what you did. Best athlete, he plays quarterback. Then they get to college and probably do something else. Then they get to the NFL and do something else, right? Now your best athlete, you're putting him a wide receiver and cornerback because it's the spread offense. It's the, more of a faster paced game. So you're seeing way more higher developed guys entering the NFL draft than you ever did at the wide receiver spot, which makes them both at the same time more valuable and less valuable. Because more valuable in that you better have one because other teams are going to have one because they're starting to become a little bit saturated, but also less valuable because they're starting to become a little bit, saturated. You still have your high-end guys like your Jamar Chases and Justin Jeffersons, but you have more guys coming into the league that are skilled players that have been doing it for a long time. But when he talks about the first 50 picks that they've got grades on, and then there's a pocket behind that. So, if they're sitting there at number 32, like it feels like it's an either. If they don't trade back, it feels like it's an either or. Because if they're sitting there at 32, they obviously don't have another pick in the top 50. The next pick is at 64. If they draft at 32, I don't think they have enough ammo to move from 64 into the top 50. I don't think they should probably even do that. But if you trade back from 32 and pick up an extra third rounder or something like that, then you could package your second and that third rounder to move up and take somebody else that might be in the top 50. Now you're getting a tackle and a wide receiver that you feel like were the top end parts of the pockets that you had. I don't know if that's going to be the case because you need two to tango, but when he talks about wide receivers, some grades on the first 50 picks, they've got good grades on, but then he mentioned the cornerback depth in the middle to late rounds and the defensive line depths in the mid round and late round. That's where talked about tackle and wide receiver at the top, cornerback and defensive line in the middle to late rounds.
I was going to say, for you guys, what's the trade back reality even look like? I know we keep talking about trade backs, and I think we all would love a trade back at 32 to try and get more value, right? But last year they couldn't do it with Will Levis, a quarterback on the board. That fifth-year option seemingly is not quite as valuable as it once was, just with the rookie contracts, the way they are, with the ability to franchise tag players, all that stuff. It just seems like if they could not do it last year, as much as we all want that, and Jack, I don't know your thoughts here, are we talking about something that quite frankly is almost impossible?
I don't know if it's impossible when you look at trading back. I think what's going to come down to, because from what we've heard from Brett Veach so far, I just get this sense that it would be wide receiver number one. Just because I don't think you're getting a starting offensive tackle, as we talked about, in the 20s, or even, you trade back in the second round, you take a tackle, they're going to be a developmental project. They're not going to be a day one starter. For a wide receiver, though, we've seen some mocks where Jalen Polk went to Kansas City, Malachi Corley went to Kansas City. Those are guys I do feel like are going to be there in day two. I don't see anybody reaching in the first round, but if you look at somebody like Brian Thomas sliding back a little bit, or maybe A.D. Mitchell slides back a little bit, and then you've got your pick of the litter at 32, maybe you just stay in that spot. But, if you see some of those top guys go off the board like they did last year, like 20, 21, 22, 23, I don't think it'll be 4 straight wide receivers like it was in last year's draft. But if you get to that point where, Malachi Corley's still available, Jalen Polk's going to be available day 2, I would see at that point you could just trade back, because we all know the 32nd pick, even though it's labeled as a first-round pick, and that kind of, I think, as you said with Felix Uzama, we are so quick to label them bust because they are a first-round pick. They're really a second-round pick. They're that close to the second round. They are a day 2 pick, in my opinion. And if you get to that point where the top guys in the wide receiver class are gone, I would say you could trade out of that first round pick and get a couple of day 2 picks, or maybe just one day 2 pick, and then you'd have that flexibility of maybe moving up in the second round and getting that guy you wanted.
I also am of the mindset that no matter what Clark Hunt said in his discussions before the draft last year, when he said, well, if it makes sense for the team, yeah, I mean, we aren't required to select. The draft is still going to be in Kansas City, whether we make a selection or not. That if it makes more sense for the team, we'll trade back. I don't think there was a snowball's chance in hell that Clark Hunt was allowing Brett Veach to trade back in the draft. Just my opinion, my theory. And so maybe the Titans were trying to trade up to 31 with the Chiefs to get Will Levis because they traded up to 33. They moved from 40 to 33 to get Will Levis, trading with, I think it was Arizona. So they had to move up to get Will Levis in the second pick of the second round because Joey Porter Jr. was going to the Steelers. They didn't have to trade with the Steelers because the Steelers had a quarterback in Kenny Pickett. So they traded right behind the Steelers and with a team that already had a quarterback in Kyler Murray and got Will Levis. They swapped third rounders and they picked up a third rounder in this draft this year. So maybe that was on the table for the Chiefs to move back, move up in the third round, and then pick up a 2024 third rounder as well. But Clark Hunt was over my dead body. We're walking out there, we're putting in a card, and we're selecting somebody with the draft in Kansas City with those 3 Lombardi trophies up there. We are going to pick somebody, and that extra third rounder next year ain't worth it. It's not worth it to me, and it's not going to be such a sizable, impactful shift for this organization than what it means tonight for the storylines overall. I don't know if that was available to him. I have no idea. Maybe the Tennessee called and they're like, yeah, we need more to move back from 31 to 40-something. That's a huge drop for us when we've got some guys here that we like. And they might not have been offering more than just exchanging third rounders. So you move up in the third round and you pick up an extra third rounder. Maybe there wouldn't be that. I don't know. Maybe Will Levis was on the board for the Titans that they wanted to move up and get him, and the Chiefs were not answering phone calls from somebody at pick number 30, unless they were blown away by the trade, and it was like, all right, the storyline's great, but they're giving us a second. They're giving us an extra second rounder, and a third rounder next year. I'm sorry. Sorry, Clark. In fact, what's that over there? Make the trade. Oh, Clark, look over there. It's Taylor Swift. She's not even supposed to be here. I'm just looking ahead. Shut up.
It's a ruse. It's just a ruse.
Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying. That's definitely possible. And also, the Titans maybe said, well, the Chiefs aren't taking a quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason to trade up to 31.
There's no reason to trade for 31.
Yeah.
It might cost too much just to get the hypothetical of the first round, as you're saying, that fifth year. Yeah, I'm just, as much as I want the Chiefs to trade back, if I had my druthers, that's what I want the Chiefs to do. I just don't know, again, the realistic possibility of the Chiefs getting that done.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. Absolutely. And if they were able to do that, if they somehow got 2 picks in the top 50, that'd be great. You trade back to 38, 39, and then you trade 64 package it with whatever pick that you got this year, or maybe package it with next year's third rounder for Snead, and you get an offensive tackle and a wide receiver in the top 50 when he's talked about 32, 35 or 40 is where those tackles are going to be gone. Past 35 or 40 tackles are going to be gone, and the wide receiver pocket of their top group outside of the first round grades with guys are the first 50 picks. So if they can find a way to do that, then I think they'd be maneuvering the board, which is what closely resembles to a degree of what at least he's presenting publicly. Let's hear from Brett Veach on this clip. Let's play clip number 5 because this goes along with teams with the trades and things like that. He's talking about teams not trading with the Chiefs.
Yes and no. I think that if a team, if it can benefit them, I think they're always going to pick up the phone and call and be willing to work. I don't think a team is going to, diminish their ability to do something they really want to do just because it's the Chiefs. I do think, though, that the ability to deal with certain teams, it's always been understood that if you're going to deal with a team in your division, there's a little bit more of a premium. But I think just some of the AFC teams in general that are consistent playoff performers, the Buffaloes and the Cincinnatis and the Baltimores, it's probably a little bit harder to deal with those teams. And even if they do pick up the phone, I think some of their asking prices are a tick higher. So I think we get hit with a little bit more interest. But I think that there's always a way to make a deal. But I think certain teams will probably up the price up a little bit.
I like the line there. You get hit with more interest when it's those teams. I think it's absurd that teams would be, maybe it's okay, we want a little bit more because you're the Chiefs. But I think it's pretty dumb to not trade with the Chiefs if it's beneficial to your team. I thought about that when people were discussing, Orlando Brown, and I was lobbying for the Chiefs to trade for Orlando Brown. I thought it could help with the left tackle spot for a couple of years, and could be a guy that can play at a Pro Bowl level at left tackle. He was fine for the Chiefs for the couple of years he was there, but so much pushback was the Ravens are never going to trade with the Chiefs. The Ravens are going to trade with the Chiefs. Why would you make the Chiefs better? Because you feel like it makes you better. Like, you don't want to shoot yourself in both feet just so you can point at the Chiefs and go, ha, we shot you in your foot too. Yeah, but I can still hop on the other one. Like, you dumbass. Like, you didn't, this is best for us, but it'll help the Chiefs. So screw them. We're not going to do it. Ha ha. Like, that just seems such a loser's mentality.
Yeah.
Now, if you say, yeah, we'll trade with you, it's going to be a touch higher. If it typically would have been a 6th round pick, maybe it's a 5th rounder next year, that we need out of this trade. But if it makes sense for them, to me, it really shouldn't matter who the team is as long as you feel like it's making you better. But if I was the Bills, I wouldn't even answer the phone from the Chiefs. I would never answer the phone. It's the Chiefs. Hang up.
Let it ring 13 seconds.
Yeah, that's right.
Let it ring.
And then they pick up the phone and they're getting a trade request, and the call is coming from inside the war room. What? They've been inside the war room the whole time. Call is coming from inside the house.
I've agreed with you, though, for the most part of I think we overreact sometimes. The teams aren't going to trade with the Chiefs. It's like, well, it's going to cost more, as Veach is alluding to, but you want to make your team better. The Ravens were in competition with the Chiefs at that point, and they still said, well, why would we not want to make our team better? This is the best offer we have for Orlando Brown Jr. He does not fit into our plans. What are we going to do? Keep him and have this malcontent at this point on our team and not pick up the draft capital? Like, no, there's always going to be instances where teams want to make their team better. The Steelers, to an extent, didn't make a lot of sense when they came out. I forget who it was. Was it Deontay Johnson or there was some, whatever it was. I think it was a wide receiver. They're like, well, we didn't want to trade with the Chiefs. And you're like, well, first off, you're
At
not
least
even
that
in
was the
competition.
report.
The report, like, allegedly.
Yeah.
Sorry. You're not even in competition with the Chiefs. You're in competition to not be the worst team in the AFC.
Right. You don't even have a quarterback. You're trying to figure that out.
That's what bad teams do.
Yeah,
That was
agreed.
my point, was bad teams do stuff like that. Good teams do not.
I think I could be in the minority here, but I even think if a deal made Buffalo better, I still don't think they'd pull the trigger. I mean, if it was...
I agree. I think that they don't ever trade with the Chiefs again.
No. Like, if Stephon Diggs, that story was true, that it was...
right.
No, we're not even answering the phone. I think it goes back to a little bit, one, the Chiefs have tortured them in the playoffs. Like, I don't know if it's an exact equivalent, but I'd imagine, if this Tyreek Hill trade would have happened a few years earlier, like right after the Chiefs lost in New England in the AFC title game, they traded Tyreek Hill to New England. And New England gave them a boatload of picks, first-round picks, maybe a star player in there, but the Chiefs gave Tyreek Hill to the Patriots. I think it's one of those things that, one, would not sit well with your fan base whatsoever. Like, even if the Chiefs had offered up some good pieces for Stephon Diggs, I think Buffalo would never be able to forgive the front office, because it's like, this is the team that's beat us 3 times in the playoffs, and one guy, even though he supposedly had been a little bit of a headache, it's like he was one of the main pieces of this Buffalo team that went head-to-head with Kansas City. You can't trade him to this villainous team.
But you know what solves that? You win. If you
not
think
trading away Patrick Mahomes in 2017 in the draft.
But winning would solve all that. You think it's stupid. You win. No one gives a hoot.
Yeah. It is a great point, because it made it easier and more palatable in the two teams the Chiefs were deciding between to trade Tyreek Hill to, or the Jets and the Dolphins.
Yeah.
A little bit easier rather than, the
Cincinnati.
Well, Cincinnati at that time. Well, yeah, that's right. They just lost to Cincinnati. So it wasn't the Patriots or Bengals or something like that, right? It wasn't one of those teams that you're trading it to, and maybe you trade him to the Patriots and Tom Brady stays around, right? He doesn't, unless he was already with Tampa Bay at that time. Not specifically in the season, because they had just lost with Brady in the playoffs. But I don't know when he ultimately went to Tampa Bay. Was it before the Tyreek Hill trade or not in the weeks before? But I don't know. Maybe he stays there, or maybe the relationship was broken and severed. Whatever. It does make it a little bit easier. They're like, Miami? Okay. They got Tua. The Jets? Okay. They got Mormon Mahomes, not the real Mahomes. So I think they're fine.
The Chiefs to the Bills are the Tampa Bay Rays to the rest of Major League Baseball. It's like, what do they see in this guy? Why are they asking about this dude?
I do wonder if that's a part of it. If, like, okay, the Chiefs are trying to trade for this guy, or the Chiefs are trying to trade up in the draft for, okay, what are we missing here?
Yeah.
All right. I think there's an element of the Rays that when the Rays come calling about a draft, about a prospect or something, maybe take a closer look at that prospect. What are they seeing in that guy that others are not seeing in that guy? What are they going to do with him that maybe you aren't able to do with him? All right, the Chiefs are wanting to trade up at pick 22. Who is there that they are going to trade up for, and why don't we have this guy higher on our board?
And then it's sabotage. You call about guys you don't want, and those guys you do want drop.
Yeah. But that's also like when Brett Veach talked about, I don't think we're going to play the clip, but when he talked about the, working the phones before, like this is the time you're working the phones and you're calling and setting things up and just sort of bouncing ideas off each other, other GMs and things like that, just to see where they're at and what the possibility of moving up looks like. Because, when it gets to about 18, 19, 20, then it's more reasonably in play as opposed to the phones aren't really going to be working for the Chiefs until like pick 15. Then at that time, you're like, all right, now let's reassess the board because there's no reason to call anybody before pick 15.
It's almost never the guy that's like number 1 or number 2 on Mel Kiper's draft board. Like, I remember vividly when they traded up for McDuffie, I thought they were trading up for Jermaine Johnson.
Jermaine Johnson.
I was like, that is the guy they're going to get. Everybody's like, oh, they need an edge rusher. Here's who it's going to be.
Yep.
And then it was McDuffie. And I'll be honest, at the time, I knew who McDuffie was, but I'm like, really? That's who they traded up to go get, and now he's a blue-chip guy and one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Like, that, I think, is the more fearing part for a lot of teams in the NFL is when they trade up, it's not the, oh, they're probably going for this guy. It's always somebody that is maybe a couple more spots down and may not be the biggest position of need for them. I would say cornerback was a need at that point, but they also still had a lot of guys there that had been starters the year before. I believe at that point.
They still had Snead.
Snead and Fenton, too.
Yeah,
was
Snead
coming
and
off
Fenton
a
was
big
there
year.
because Ward had already signed with the 49ers at that point. So they had Snead and Fenton, and then DeAndre Baker was a guy that was like, oh, he's got a little bit of, his former first-round draft pick.
Mike Hughes?
Mike Hughes, yeah.
There were pieces.
Yeah, there were at least guys that just said if you didn't go cornerback, because if McDuffie wasn't there, they wouldn't have taken a cornerback in the first round.
Correct me
I don't know
wrong.
what they would. Maybe they would have taken Elam, or well, I guess they wouldn't have because Buffalo.
I hope not.
Ended up taking in that. But
Rashad Breeland. Wasn't there talk at the time of potentially bringing him? It doesn't matter now, obviously, but
yeah, maybe. But yeah, they had pieces there, which is like, when he talks about if the offensive line or tackle or a tackle and wide receiver spot is not there, well, what's the value in other positions like a cornerback or a defensive line? Those are the two positions he mentioned specifically. They didn't mention running back, though. That was interesting. I'm just joking. I think this is the year that breaks the record for the lowest drafted running back. I think 2014 was pick 54. Bishop Sankey was the highest drafted running back in 2014.
Stud.
Yeah, that draft
Great
class.
name.
That draft class wasn't all that great. It was like McKinnon, James White, and Devontae Freeman, I think, were the running backs in that, and they were all like 3rd and 6th, and round
and all
picks.
3 are kicking it right now, right?
Yeah, still good. Yeah, but there's a lot of like, who? Oh, I remember that guy. Really? Oh, that guy, really? Yeah. So there's a reason why the running backs didn't go until like late second round, and there's a little bit of that this year too. We'll find out. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. I want to hear from Brett Veach. He was on the Kevin Harvick podcast, and we'll play a couple of clips from that, including the one guy he thinks about that was the biggest miss in his career as a general manager in the draft. We'll do that next. We'll talk with Josh Kaiser coming up at noon. One Royal Way podcast. Get his thoughts on the Kansas City Royals. They get ready for the Toronto Blue Jays. They lose the series to the Orioles over the weekend, dropping 2 of 3. They win Friday night. Can't get it done in a comeback fashion on Saturday, and just never really there yesterday in just one of those professional beatdowns of a it wouldn't be just a professional win where you just go in and it's one of those 50, 60 games that you're going to win or lose throughout a season, and they lose 5-0. So we'll talk with Josh Kaiser about that. Royals moving forward, getting ready for the Blue Jays in these 4 games. 913-912-4810. Let's hear from Brett Veach. If you were to ask what, and I've already mentioned this a couple times, so we know the answer. What's the player that Chiefs fans talk so much about in the draft that the Chiefs passed up on with Brett Veach? I mean, it's one name constantly. We joke about if Brett Veach wins 5 more Super Bowls and he's got 8 on his resume, like the first line of his, obituary is, passed up on DK Metcalf to take McCole Hardman. Brett Veach also was a big part of drafting Patrick Mahomes and won 8 Super Bowls with the Chiefs, but the main thing would be like, oh, how did you pass up on DK Metcalf for McCole Hardman? So here's Brett Veach. He was on the Kevin Harvick podcast, and this is clip number 14. Brett Veach, Kevin Harvick podcast. He was asked about, are there any guys, players that stick out in your mind that you look back on that still stay with you that you missed on?
I think there are some guys that if you miss on guys, DK Metcalf might be a guy that stands out just because the limited pass tree. I think there were some injury concerns, and sometimes I think what you learn through the process, especially with these injuries, and I'm fortunate that we have a great training staff, and Rick Burkholder, our trainer, we've been together for a long time. But our relationship was different when I was a scout as opposed to GM, and just understanding and learning the terminology. But I think sometimes getting clarification on injury status and the likelihood of someone making the contract. I mean, sometimes you don't take guys and fans do the mock drafts and they go through them and they're like, well, we should have taken this, like years later, we should have taken this guy or that guy. But at the time, a player could have been off your board because you had character concerns or an injury concern. And so I think looking back on DK, like there was areas that we weren't sure on, but there was none maybe that should have prompted us to bypass that. And I think that's one player that sticks out. And I'm sure there's a ton other, and I think every team is probably the same way. I'm sure there's a lot of teams that were too low on Pat Mahomes and saying that quarterbacks from the Texas Tech air raid style of offense don't work out. So I think every team has it, and I think it's useful because you learn stuff from why you didn't select a guy at the time, and it's been helpful for me. Sometimes the big misses help you grow into a better GM, and you're better off for it in the long run.
It's easy to do that if your big miss is not a quarterback, right? If you don't miss on the quarterback, they've got the quarterback right. So when looking back, it's interesting there because the assumption has been made, and I've just held it to be sort of the assumption is true, in that you trade up to get McCole Hardman because he was the closest skill set match to what Tyreek Hill offered to your offense, and you didn't know about Tyreek Hill. So it's always sort of like, okay, you put an asterisk next to that trade by Brett Veach to get up and get McCole Hardman past DK Metcalf because they didn't need DK Metcalf. They had Sammy Watkins. They needed the Tyreek Hill guy. And without Tyreek Hill, then, McCole Hardman fills that role. But he didn't mention at any point talking about DK Metcalf of, different circumstances going on in our club at the time to where, maybe we looked at him a little bit differently than what we were looking for. Like that would have been very easy to sort of include in that clip, in that answer, which would be alluding to Tyreek Hill of what's going on there. But he said limited route tree and some injury concerns that were there. And then talked about, obviously people look back and do the mock drafts and go, you should have taken that guy or that guy. And he's like, well, at the time, these are the issues. But then his statement of almost being like regretful in that there were no concerns. There were none that should have prompted us to bypass him. Yeah. None that were big enough that should have prompted us to bypass him. And you learn from those things. And I don't know if they've taken somebody that's helped the Chiefs now that they got by not taking DK Metcalf. Was Rashee Rice a guy with a limited route tree? And they went, we passed on DK because of that. And we get him in here. He'll learn how to do those things. Maybe we do go Rashee Rice and we aren't beholden to these are the coloring inside the lines and you can't deviate from that at all. I thought that was interesting looking back there was nothing that should have prompted us to bypass him. There was nothing big enough to where we should have bypassed that guy, moved past him, and taken McCole Hardman.
That means Xavier Legette, come on down.
That's exactly right. That's the only way you can read into that, right? It's the only thing to read into that.
I thought learning through the process and understanding medicals better, because he talked about how from a scout to a GM, there's a big jump in just understanding terminology and just what is and what does not take a guy off the board. And I wonder if that also played in the part of them not missing on Trey Smith. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I wonder if they go, okay, we look too far in the medicals. And that's, again, what happens as a GM. Early on, you want to make sure you don't mess up at all, right? When you start winning Super Bowls, you have a little more leeway. Maybe you can take a little more risk. And again, obviously, second round versus sixth round, going to be a lot different. But they didn't miss on Trey Smith. They at least tried. Again, not a draft pick, but brought in Justin Ross. Has not worked, but they at least brought him in. I'm trying to think of other players that have maybe had some injury concerns that they've changed their thought process on. Obviously, I wonder, George Pickens is the other name that's going to come up to mind. If you said you learned on DK Metcalf with the route tree and some of the
that might have been
not
character
medicals,
concerns.
but character.
Yeah. And then Pickens' character concerns, maybe that helped with a little bit with Rashee Rice.
Sure.
I don't know. Maybe there are a couple of things with Rashee Rice that were like, there's some character concerns. There's some route running. He's more of a guy that finds zones, and he can be a jump ball guy. Like, hey, you know what? We did this with DK, and we did this with George Pickens, and those guys turned out to be pretty damn good wide receivers. So, maybe we look a little more deeper in this to see if these are enough to prompt us to bypass him, let alone trade up to get him.
The best thing is that his first draft was the worst draft.
Yeah.
He's gotten progressively better since he's grown as a GM, and I think that's all you can ask for, right? If he started off hot and then he starts tapering off, then you go, okay, he got lucky. No, this to me is a guy who has a game plan. He's learned from the process. He stuck to it, and he's still improving in the draft process.
He wouldn't have a job if his best draft was Breland Speaks.
Correct, yes.
Would be fired pretty quickly.
I don't get too upset about the DK Metcalf miss too much because, one, it was a day 2 pick. A lot of other teams I kind of passed on it. Wasn't there something about, at the combine, it was like the shuttle or the cone drill that wasn't good?
He doesn't move very well. He's a straight line runner.
Yes. And so that popped up and I was like, well, he's still this big hulking wide receiver, a true number one. And I guess I don't get too upset because when was the last wide receiver, with the exception of Jonathan Baldwin, the Chiefs drafted, that was this 6'4" freak that was a one-on-one, jump ball guy? Like, it was always the smaller, better route runners, good hands. Not saying Hardman or Sky Moore had that, but they identify the guys that they like. And when you win so much, it's like, how at the time could you have ripped your hair out for it? Because it had worked. Tyreek Hill, though he had fallen in the draft because of the off-field stuff, but a smaller-bodied, fast route-running wide receiver with good hands. Then you get to Hardman, it was like the same thing. And then after Hardman, it was Sky Moore. So at the time, I wasn't too upset about it because DK Metcalf never fit that profile. Well, it is cool to see Brett Veach say, hey, I did miss on that. I regret that. And that is cool to see because that's like every Chiefs fan's biggest regret as well. It was DK Metcalf instead of McCole Hardman, and I guess Veach acknowledges that. But to me, it was like, when was the last time the Chiefs went after a wide receiver like that? Like with Xavier Legette, it would be awesome because he kind of fits that profile. But like Rashee Rice is the only big-bodied wide receiver, and he's 6'2". So it's not like he was the 6'4", 6'5", like, wow, he really stands out on the depth chart.
And I think one other thing as we go to break, I think one other thing is, he's won 3 Super Bowls since that draft. So it does make it a little bit easier, and it does make it a little bit easier to digest as a Chiefs fan for him to admit and go, was there anybody that sticks out? Well, I think DK Metcalf, to actually name somebody, because how many GMs would have gone, well, there's always guys that are there and guys that you feel like you could have drafted and everything, but that's every GM. We've got our process and we trust what we've done throughout the years, and any fan after the fact can go and point out different guys.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see Ryan Pace doing any Mahomes flashbacks anytime soon.
But that's an easy. Hey, Ryan, Anybody you may have missed
Anyone
on?
you overlooked? Or
Anybody
didn't
that
invite?
is there any maybe? And that's what Brett Veach was saying. Well, hell, ask Ryan Pace about that because I bet a lot of people thought Patrick Mahomes wasn't a good enough player.
John Lynch is saying that too. He's saying, please ask Ryan Pace about trading up for a quarterback that's really bad.
Ask him. Ooh, look over there. right, wrapping up this hour. A lot of Chiefs talk here in this hour. A lot of Royals talk in the first hour. We'll talk with Josh Kaiser coming up at noon. Mick Schaefer will join us in the 1 o'clock hour. Jack, you're heading to Wichita?
I am.
Safe travels, buddy.
Private jet
Safe
waiting
travels
outside in the parking lot.
From here to there. Safe travels in those 15 feet to get there. Get there safely. That's all. Watch out. There's a speed trap right there.
Mm-hmm.
Right there.
Do you need my arm? Like we can go arm in arm if you need some help.
My
walking there?
walker's over there.
Your walker's over here. Okay.
Perfect. That's perfect
Thanks,
stuff.
young lad.
Thank you, Jack. We continue rolling along here on this Monday edition of the show. We'll play some more Beach clips coming up later on in the noon hour. Mick Schaefer will join us in the 1 o'clock hour. We got Learn Funniest Best that we'll get into today. Boy, I learned a few things over the weekend, which is nice because typically I don't really learn at all. So it's a nice change.
And better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you heading up until 2 o'clock. Mick Schaefer joins us an hour from now. We're going to talk some baseball here with Josh Kaiser, One Royal Way podcast. But before we do that, coming up tonight, 6:30 on our radio waves, the Eastern Conference Finals with the Comets playing it for a chance to advance to the championship series, taking on the Milwaukee Wave. You got the Cable Dom Arena is where it's located. We're giving away 4 tickets. Let's do that. Let's give away a 4-pack right now. 913-3-810-810, a 4-pack if you want to head to that game tonight. 913-3-810-810 to head out to that game at Cable Dahmer Arena, the Eastern Conference Finals. We got the game for you right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB at 6:30 as well. So caller number 8, 4-pack to watch that game tonight, 913-3-810-810. Let's bring in Josh Kaiser to the conversation here, talking some Royals baseball. They get ready for the Toronto Blue Jays tonight out at Kauffman Stadium. Josh, what's up, man? How are you, sir?
Doing swell. A little sore from I found a new peak of adulthood over the weekend. If you're interested in hearing about that,
I would love to hear about it. What's the peak of adulthood for Josh?
Doing 12 hours worth of landscaping in your front yard to increase the curb appeal of a house that you're not intending to sell or move away from. So my body is not what it used to be, but we are recovering and ready to roll. You know what?
One of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life was doing a full day's worth of landscaping and not paying somebody to do it for me, because I have paid for it since 2018, August of 18. Did landscaping, and I had the same sort of motion that I was trying to dig up a patch of grass and move it instead of just buying new sod. I thought, well, I'm smart enough and good enough. I'll just, bring this and then play it and then move it over there. In doing that, I actually messed up a disc in my neck, had a pinched nerve. Ooh. And it still, to this day, bothers me. I went 2 years of not being able to really do much with my right arm. I've done the dry needling. I've done the cupping. I did the injections into the neck. Finally, like the 5th injection stuck, and it allowed my neck to heal a little bit. But that was from one fateful day in August of 2018. And now I'll just go and buy the sod. That was just dumb for me to do. Lesson learned, but it's a lesson that I still feel every once in a while when I wake up. I'm like, I can't move my neck today. That sucks. So I hope your body is okay. If not, I got some tips for you.
Yeah, it's basically just recovery at this point. I think we're good. There was no disc slippage this time.
Hopefully not.
It could. Time comes for us all, so it could literally happen right now as I'm talking to you on the phone. Hopefully that's not the case, knock on some wood, but that's, it'll happen someday. I woke up the next day feeling fine, and by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I could not move my neck, couldn't move my shoulders, and I'm like, well, something's wrong here. Something's really wrong here. So I'm not in the clear here. So no. I might be. Well, was it yesterday that you did this? Yeah. We finished yesterday. So. Well, just be aware. Unless you did the same motion for like 3 hours straight, which is what I was doing, which isn't smart, which was a lot of torquing and pulling on the neck.
which not the wisest move, then you're probably in the clear if you were doing multiple, different things. So I don't know.
We were working with landscaping bricks, so it wasn't the same motion, but a lot of pulling, a lot of torquing.
Yep, I know.
A lot of torquing going on.
I know, I get it, man.
It was brick fest up in here.
It was a brick fest with the torque everywhere. You know what? That is that is peak adulthood. Well done. Now it's really peak adulthood when you can't then move the next day and you have to have 3 or 4 years worth of work done on your neck, and actually contemplating whether or not they need to have surgery until you find out that they go in through the front, Josh. And I thought, well, my job would prohibit you from cutting open the front part of my neck. So I'm going to go ahead and say, no, I'm not going to get that fusion surgery or whatever that you guys think could be a possibility if these injections don't start to take. Okay.
That's one of those things where, I'm no doctor. I'm not here to tell you how to do your job, but that just doesn't make any sense to me. So you're going to have to tell me in a different way. Yeah,
explain it to me as to why it would make sense for me who talks for a living. No, I pay for landscaping now because I have paid way more money in doctor bills and the trips than I ever would have if I'd have just paid for somebody to do it for me. So there you go. Now that we've got that figured out and out of the way, there is a beautiful patch of grass out at Kaufman. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, yeah.
They do some great work on that. Let's start with wrap up the series against the Orioles and wrap up the season series against the Orioles, thankfully. They are 2-4 against that really good team, and it felt like 5 of the 6 games they had an opportunity to win. They were in those games, and they blew a couple in Baltimore earlier this year. And then, the game on Saturday night, the 7 spot that was put up in the second inning against Reagan's, and then, of course, fighting back, the offense did. We sort of take assessment in the State of the Union for the Royals, but 22 games in, 18 games or so away from looking at it and going, 40 games is where you can get a real good feel for this team. Where do they stand in your mind 22 games in? Ahead, behind, right around on schedule of what you thought they would look like through the first, month of the season?
I mean, personally, it is 100% ahead of schedule. I mean, considering where they came from, and you could say that they underachieved even for a 106-loss team last year, but to me, to make this jump to not only be above 500, but you kind of mentioned it a little bit there. I think there's only been like 3 games that you really didn't feel like they deserved to win, or at least were not in it at all. Yesterday was one of them. Another one was in the opening day against Minnesota, and then they had the weird one against the Mets last week or 2 weeks ago as well. So, I mean, we're talking 22 games. There's only 3 games where you don't really think that they came and showed up to play, and that feels really, really good. That absolutely feels like a change has occurred. They are ahead of schedule, at least in my mind, and things are looking good. So I think there are plenty of red flags to kind of keep an eye on, especially in that starting pitching rotation. But above all, I think we're in a good spot as Royals fans.
Where do you land on moral victories? And if Saturday night was a moral victory, should we be in the business of moral victory with this Royals team now? Are we still at at least a position in the rebuild process to where those things, there's tangible value to them? Where do you stand on what the Royals did after falling behind 7-0 on Saturday?
Moral victories are, we're, as fans, in the business of moral victories. I think we want to see that corner turn, and we want to see how they fare against the good teams, and Baltimore is certainly one of those. That lineup is ridiculous. We saw Corbin Burns, who was their ace. I mean, we went into that series knowing, we could have taken the series. We have swept them in Baltimore, so there's no reason why we should fear this team. We can compete with this team. And then your ace gets blown up in the second inning, first inning, and you still manage to claw their way back. The offense responds to such a large deficit early, and they're like, nah, we got you today. We're going to get back into this. The crowd was awesome that night, and, moral victories are not tangible. They're not a win, they're a loss at the end of the day. But, Vinny Pasquantino talked about at the end of the game yesterday that they felt like they left games on the table here, but it was good to see, that they were able to come in against a really good team and give them a really good fight. So it is baseball, any given Sunday, but that applies to baseball, whatever. But it was still very good to see this team respond to a good team and be in it for where they were, even if it was a series loss.
Yeah, I go back and forth on this because if there weren't expectations this year, I would view that as, you know what, they fought back, and that's good because, they're still in it, and they showed a little moxie there, and they weren't quitting and just thinking that the game was over, and let me think about what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, or what am I going to be doing for dinner on Sunday since we got a day game tomorrow? Like, I'm already thinking ahead of those things. Like, that wasn't the case. And so if they didn't have some of the expectations or the hope this year, I would be more in line of the, quote-unquote moral victory. But I do think there is something to take away from that in terms of the overall series. And Vinny Pasquantino's comments after the game was over, I think are, at least a good spot to look at for this team and way to approach it is, we can have whatever opinion we want perception-wise outside of the clubhouse, Josh. I mean, we can think whatever we want, but inside the clubhouse, those guys looked at it and said, we let games get away. We are as good as that team, and that's one of the best teams in baseball, and we're right there. We could have taken both series from the Orioles. They didn't. So now figure out what happened. Figure out why you didn't get, one more game in Baltimore, why you couldn't get one more game here in Kansas City. So I've sort of, fought the angel and the devil, or they fought on my shoulder after Saturday night of me also going, you know what? I am excited about this season. I do have hope for this season. I am scoreboard watching. So, yeah, I'm a little annoyed they ended up losing on Saturday night. And the fact that they fell behind 7-0 sucks. It's one of those things. But then fighting back got me excited, but then also annoyed when Isbell gets thrown out at third, and you think what could have been. And now I'm like, moral victory, but damn it, I'm pissed because they could have won.
You're feeling feelings again.
Yes, I'm in a glass, case of emotion here. Okay, I'm just, I don't know what to do with my hands right now.
And legitimately, when was the last time you felt like that watching a Royals game as a Royals fan?
It's
2017?
It's been maybe early 21 when they got off to the hot start, and you're like, okay, can they compete here? And then quickly you're like, no, they can't. No, they aren't good. But so that was the total flash in the pan. That was lightning in a bottle. That was it for that one. But like legitimately, I'm watching the game and it bats, and I'm trying to cheer while being a little quiet because the kids are asleep. I don't know the last time that's happened where I've cheered and clapped and it was like, oh, wait, whoops, kids are asleep, shut up. That's actually been a while.
Yeah, I was the same way. Like, it felt like postseason baseball, and I have missed postseason baseball so much. It felt like I was clapping and cheering the way I cheer for Chiefs games on Sunday afternoons and Sunday nights. And again, also trying not to wake the kids with my clapping and yelling. Very similar situation. But you want to talk about expectations. We both are on the record saying, 77, 78 wins?
77
is that where we both fell?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we are talking now about, we lost 2 out of 4, or 2 out of 6. I'm sorry. Let me back up. We took 2 out of 6 from the Baltimore Orioles, but we could easily be talking about 5 out of 6 against one of the best teams of baseball. And again, this is a moral victory thing and whatever. But I am also in the situation where I'm looking at MLB power rankings now, and the Royals are not 27th.
Right.
They are not 28th. They are 6th last week. Now they're 8th this week. So it is power rankings. They are what they are, but there are expectations now that are not, hey, just finish around 500 and we'll be happy. We would still absolutely take that as fans, but we are also kind of leaving the door open for a little bit of a shot at postseason relevancy at some point in this year, and that in and of itself is exceeding all the expectations that even the most optimistic of us have put on this team coming into the season. So it is a lost series. It is what it is, but I still feel really good about it.
Visiting with Josh Kaiser, One Royal Way podcast. I want to talk about the offense because it's an odd feeling as well that I come away from the series thinking, boy, the offense really struggled. Boy, the offense is in such a funk. Yet they scored 16 runs in 2 games. They got 9 on Friday and still scored 7 on Saturday, even though I would really like them to face more often Yohan Ramirez. I think if they could face him more often, this offense would be amazing. Just
great. Yeah,
just
really
more of that guy. 4 pitch walks to Isbell, wild pitches, hitting Frazier. Things like that typically make a really good. The guys that in a Royals game where you would have said the number 8 hitter got hit by a pitch, then there was a wild pitch. The number 9 hitter got walked on 4 straight pitches. You're like, oh God, who's the pitcher for the Royals? Who's this guy?
Yep.
Get him the hell out of the game. Send him down to the minors. Why is this guy in the game? This was the guy we were hoping would be the next prospect that could do something. That would be the conversation. But I come away from that game for some reason, not game, but series of thinking, the offense struggling. And maybe it's because of the hot and cold. Maybe it's because of the, ninth inning / first 6 innings or whatever in that game on Saturday night, and then the entire 9 innings yesterday. But how do you look at this offense that puts up 16 runs in 2 games the way that they did? They go 1-1 in those games, but they also have guys like Garcia, who's batting 174, getting on base at 220, Renfroe OPSing it at 540, and Isbell OPSing at 467. Like, there are 3 guys in this lineup that just are not good, and they are black holes in this lineup right now, and that's not even including the Adam Frazier, which Massey's now playing, and not including what has happened with Melendez, sort of coming back to earth and got a couple of hits and things like that. Where do you fall on this offense, and is there a real concern moving forward with guys that are just close to automatic outs when they come up?
Yeah, it is kind of a weird mixed bag of inconsistency, and we talked last week through the multiple big cellular interruptions.
By the way, this has been, knock on wood, this has been so much more enjoyable.
I'm in a different room in the house, so
okay.
I kept a real good, close eye on my bars coming into this appearance. So
Great.
We're going to give this a shot. But so far, so good. Knock on wood once again. I don't need pinch nerves. The inconsistency kind of went back to the fact that this team is very aggressive, especially in the zone. And I think I mistakenly put on them that they are not an on-base team, but they're currently doing pretty well as far as getting on base. So I don't think that's it, but they are still getting very unlucky. They're still hitting the ball hard. It's just I don't really know what to make of it on that point. They're not really chasing a whole lot. They're not striking out much. They're walking in an okay rate. They're putting balls in play. I mean, it's a weird situation to kind of be able to put your finger on any one thing is to cause the inconsistency. But I keep also coming back to the fact that most of that lineup is still relatively young. It's not like it was last year, but it is still pretty young, all things considered. So I think it will get a little bit more solid in that realm. I mean, we're going to have guys coming and going off of hot streaks, and it's going to be a roller coaster. That's just baseball. But some of these guys like Maikel Garcia really hitting a slump. MJ, like you said, not really doing much here lately. Hunter Renfroe, his average isn't great, but he's been one of the better hitters over the last 2 weeks as far as like OPS goes. So I some of those guys are just purposefully not great. I'm not holding my breath for Kyle Isbell to turn things around, but a guy like Maikel Garcia, a guy like MJ Melendez definitely has a longer history of being able to succeed. So I still think that that's still the case, but we'll have to see. I don't love the inconsistency, but boy, it sure does make for exciting baseball.
Yeah, the name you brought up there, and in Kyle Isbell has been a conversation that we've been having on this show. Not necessarily our conversations, but just in general on the show. Sterling and I talking about it last week as well. And I don't know how ingrained Kyle Isbell is in the plans for the Royals moving forward. I know it was significant and noteworthy when J.J. Piccolo last year talked about the evaluation season and said number 1 was Bobby Witt, can he play shortstop? Number 2, Isbell, can he stick in center? That was really noteworthy because it showed what they thought of Isbell as a center fielder, and he's a really good center fielder. Nobody's debating that. Nobody's doubting that. But it is really hard to play a center field at a level good enough to make up for a 200 on-base percentage and a 250 slug. There is the greatest center fielder and catching everything out there to then be an automatic out every time you come up. It's difficult to make up for that bad of a bat. And I wonder, and I don't know when the Royals will, but, I mean, do you think the Royals, or how close would you be to ejecting on Isbell and saying it's not working? He's had a pretty decent sample size to show if he can hit in Major League Baseball, and he's consistently shown that he can't. When do you eject on Isbell and find somebody else moving forward if this team is serious about trying to win a division this year?
Yeah, I think it's got to be relatively soon, especially with Drew Waters heating up down in Omaha. He had a really tough start to the season outside of a couple big, extra base hits, but he's really, really calmed down as far as striking out. He's only striking out in the last 2 weeks, only at 22% of the time, it was 20% of the time, and his walk rate was like 11%. So he is turned into a disciplined hitter the last couple of weeks down there in Omaha, which, he's done plenty of times before, so he might just be what he is as well, but he's still relatively young. So with Drew Waters kind of knocking on the door, if not banging it down, Kyle Isbell is definitely feeling the heat from that. He's chasing at an alarming rate the last 2 or 3 weeks, so that doesn't bode well for him. It kind of shows that he's pressing a little bit more than you'd like, and is not going to be recoverable if the pitcher knows that you're going to swing at whatever he's going to throw up there. So I'm probably decently close to punting on him as an everyday starter. I think there's still room for him on the roster as like a fourth outfielder, defensive replacement for a guy like Hunter Renfroe at that point. But they also have Dairon Blanco, who steals the crap out of bases. So I was talking about this on Twitter the other day. Like, at what point is Isabel's defense better than the value that Dairon Blanco brings to you in a okay defensive placement, but a really guy who can steal bases? So from a roster standpoint, I think it's probably about time to get Isbell restarted somehow, if that's even a possibility. And if it's not, then he should be buried in Omaha anyway. So I'm really close to ejecting. I'm never going to give up on, I shouldn't say never, but I love Kyle Isbell coming in, and it's really hard to quit him at this point. So I might be the last one on the bandwagon.
Well, this isn't, grade school baseball anymore. He's clearly liked in the clubhouse. You saw that in the dugout when the Royals were scoring and continuing the rally after Isbell's toot plan that he had getting thrown out at third, that when they would get a hit or score a run, guys were coming up to Isbell and cheering with him. And it's like, we got you, If he wasn't liked, people would be like, yeah, thanks a lot. Imagine what we'd be doing if you weren't such a dumbass, Like, he's clearly liked in the clubhouse. There's some sort of a value that comes with that. If you're a jerk, you've got a shorter leash. If you're well liked, they might keep you around a little bit longer. But I think what he's showing is that he plays such good defense that, hey, now he can be a fourth outfielder. Is he a guy good enough that now he can be Garrett Hampson? Do you need Hampson on the team if you got Isbell and bring up Waters for Hampson? Like, I don't know what the corresponding move would be, unless Matt Quatrero says, well, we're going to put Hampson in center field a few more times. Let's give Isbell a couple days off. We gave him the day off yesterday. Let's see what he looks like if he can just sort of reset, as Kevin Costner would say, clear the mechanism, and then go out there and play and get back into at least having a representative number at the plate while playing really, really good defense. If he can do that, then he can stick. We'll give him a little bit of time. Then he comes back and keeps doing this. He hasn't really shown much of a propensity to hit at the big league level. At some point, you just got to say, it's go time. And if they feel like this year is any close to go time, then, you got to figure something out. And if Drew Waters is doing what he's doing down in AAA, then it might be time very soon. I'm sitting at the end of this month, Josh. I'm giving him a little bit more. I'll give him maybe through this stretch of a couple of weeks and then make that decision if he's still hitting like this, and if Drew Waters is doing close to what he's doing at AAA, that I've just got to make that move and bring up Drew Waters and have him be my center fielder and see what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, he's probably going to get a day off today because you say Kikuchi's a really tough left-hander.
What's
so
that?
why?
Well, I didn't say that.
Give him that.
I didn't say that.
Oh. All right. Well, I'm going to put the word in your mouth.
Yeah, you say. I didn't say that. I don't know what you're talking about there. Plus, this is a family show.
It's true. That's true. That's a great point. Sorry, Mom. You give him a couple days off, see where he is. The 40 game benchmark is usually where it's at, but there is plenty of sample size on Kyle Isbell. But 40 games, I'm totally in on giving him that much time to kind of turn this around. But again, this wouldn't be nearly as bad if he wasn't the only hole in the bottom of that lineup.
Yes,
you can absolutely swallow his value overall in center field, especially if your 7-hitter isn't hitting 230, if your 8-hitter isn't a rotating door of 240. So if this is a playoff team, Kyle Isbell is definitely on the hot seat, but if it's not nearly as big of a deal if there are multiple holes in that lineup. He's just the one. There's always got to be one. There's a Ryan O'Hearn. There's a Hunter Dozier. There's always one person that's going to catch the most flack for any kind of offensive woes. And right now, that seems to be Kyle Isbell.
Yep. Visiting with Josh Kaiser. Tyler Duffy has been called up by the Royals. Another arm there in the bullpen. I guess the corresponding move with Jordan Lyles being placed on the inactive list, and I have no idea what's going on with Jordan Lyles. I hope everything's okay. He's inactive based on a personal matter. But Tyler Duffy, I don't know much about Tyler Duffy, to be honest with you. What are the Royals getting when they bring up this guy?
They get a guy with plenty of experience in the majors. I think he's got just under 500 innings in the major leagues, so there's experience there. As far as what he's done in Omaha this year, not that many appearances, but he's had a little trouble locating the zone. I think his walk rate's like 13.5, but he's also getting some swings and misses as well. Not very hard tosser. He's around 91, 92 with the fastball, but the rotation and the spin on it's really, really good. And then he's got a little bit of stuff, about 5 different pitches from him. So I don't know. I thought there was guys like Sam Long and Walter Pennington that potentially made a better case to be added to the 40-man roster in this way. But I do understand, bringing the experience in, seeing what Tyler Duffy can do at the major league level. If it's nothing, then you can cut him loose and bring up one of those other guys. But that's kind of what I think the organization is thinking about it. And then we'll see how Pennington and Sam Long look after that happens. But it's not a flashy move, but it is, decent experience, decent depth from the right hand, which if you're replacing Jordan Lyles, that's more or less what you were trying to get from him anyway. So it is what it is. I mean, it's one of the only transactions they've made this year. Still only like maybe a handful of transactions in 22 games is still pretty solid. So curious to see what they get from him, see if he can locate that zone and then miss bats on the other part of that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I completely missed that they signed him. It's now I'm looking at it, the Tyler Duffy from the Twins. So, been around a while. I'm thinking, they call up this young guy, Tyler Duffy. I don't know much about him, so here's my ignorance. What are they getting in this 24-year-old Tyler Duffy? Well, they're getting a 33-year-old, actually, that's been around and pitched with the Twins for a long time. Oh, that guy. That's the same guy? So Babe Ruth and the Great Bambino, that's the same guy? The Sultan of Swat? The Colossus
we're really
of Clout.
talking about Tyler Duffy and Babe Ruth in the same breath right now. It's very interesting.
The Colossus of Clout. The Colossus of Clout. Great Bambino. Tyler Duffy.
Danny Duffy's son?
See? That Danny Duffy is, wow, how old am I? Danny Duffy's son is now at the big league level. Named Tyler.
Yeah.
And wanted to spell it differently, so that's fun for him. You know, that's I don't know if there was a falling out.
He's stepping into the major league bullpen. He needs to step out of his dad's shadow.
That's right.
But, I mean, he needs to end it with an EY instead of the Y, just like Dad.
That's right. Yeah. It's weird. And now we do want to make sure people know that while we talk about him being Duffy's son, it's a stepson. Okay, so it's not his actual son. He married into the Duffy EY family because Danny is only 2 years older than Tyler, so it's not his actual son. So it's a stepson.
I'm glad you looked that up because that was also going through my mind. This is a weird situation, like a Modern Family situation where, your stepson is only 2 years younger than you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm not going to call him Dad, even if there's a fire.
Yeah. Not even if there's a fire.
Not even if there's a fire. Josh Kaiser, One Royal Way podcast, our guest. Josh, as always, I appreciate it, sir. Enjoy the baseball, and we will talk next week, brother.
That sounds great. Thanks, boys.
All right, there's Josh Kaiser. Great stuff from him. One Royal Way podcast. And we covered a lot. We learned a lot there. The Duffys being related and Tyler Duffy not being happy with Danny Duffy being his stepfather, so he just changed his last name, just added an E. Also, is not some random prospect, that was in the minors. It's like, because I saw the news, like right as we were bringing Josh on, I'm like, oh, they're calling up Tyler Duffy for the inactive. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, what are we getting in Tyler Duffy? A 33-year-old right-hander that's been in the league for 9 years. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, this is cool. Yeah. What about Anybody else that they're getting? What about them, though? I'm fine. Then I'll ask a Twins guy. Great. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. And Mick Schaefer will join us in the 1 o'clock hour. A couple more clips from Brett Veach that we'll play. Tyreek Hill was on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast. And I learned that there is a podcast called $1 Million Worth of Game. So we'll talk about what Tyreek Hill had to say about L'Jarius Sneed and Brett Veach talking about a few other things that relate to the draft coming up on Thursday. More Zone right after this. All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. We're going to spend the next segment going over guys we're just learning about that have been in the majors for 9 years. So we're going to do that. Every segment, we're going to bring up somebody else that's been in the majors for 9 years that are like, oh.
Chris Taylor.
Who? I know a Michael A. Okay, I don't know a Chris Taylor.
Let's see how many years. If it's 9, I'm actually gonna lose it.
No, that would be great.
11. It's 11.
Oh,
sorry.
So close.
Yeah.
So close. Man.
Well, the COVID year.
Yes.
Yeah.
My goodness. 913-912-4810 is the text line. You know what? Speaking of that, that's a great segue that you didn't even know that we were going to do with Brett Veach. Let's play clip number 8 here. Brett Veach talking about the NIL effect on some of the mid-round players and the effect it's having and some of the older players they're getting now in the middle of the draft.
Typically, when you're working through the 4th, 5th, 6th round, there's always interesting prospects and small school guys. But I think it's what you're starting to see is these 4th, 5th, 6th round prospects are a little older because they're staying, and some of these underclassmen that get 3rd, 4th round grades, they have the opportunity to stay in school. And so I don't know if these drafts, and this will be a trend, where they won't be as deep as they used to be. So, I mean, if you're a junior and you have a 3rd or 4th round grade and you have an opportunity to stay in school and make money, you're going to go back, potentially stay in school. And so what happens is I think the drop off from rounds 3, the cutoff line, I think that availability of young guys with potential that came out early, maybe they would have stayed, they would have been a 1st or 2nd round pick. Those guys are staying now. So I think the drop off numbers are a little bit more extreme this year, and the players are a little bit older. So we have to work a little bit harder to find some young guys with upside that we really like. That to me, I found challenging. And when we were going through the board, it was one of the things that I kind of like just instinctively thought. And then when I checked with our guys, they were like, yeah, these guys are a lot older.
So that's fascinating to me because a lot of times if you're getting an older player, you're getting closer to a finished product. There's less molding, but you're still talking about maybe older as 23 as opposed to L'Jarius Sneed was an older prospect when they drafted him.
Sure.
So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that, teams are dealing with this year. The Chiefs, if you're looking at the middle of the draft, so in the 4th and 5th round, they've got 3 picks in the 4th and 5th round, pick 131, 159, and 173. So they gave up, a 6th rounder last year for a 5th rounder this year, which is a great trade. You got better value. Doesn't matter if it's a year ahead. It's still a 5th round draft pick for a 6th round pick. That's awesome. And if they trade this 5th round pick this year that they got from the Cowboys for a 4th rounder next year, great. And if they do that for a 4th rounder, for a 3rd rounder, eventually that 6th rounder will move into a 1st round draft pick if they keep doing that. That's just smart business. But a little bit of what it sounds like there, like Brett Veach, it always feels like his sweet spot is the 2nd round. Like that second day, it feels like. And then they are able to get some players in different spots. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed, Josh Williams, Trey Smith in the 6th round.
Isaiah Pacheco
in the 7th round, right. I mean, they've Jalen Watson in the 7th round. They've found some players in that mid-round. And I wonder how much is NIL and how much is also, the COVID year. And it's a combination of that. Guys are just simply older because of the COVID year that they have. And guys are getting that extra year. And if you don't think you're going to be a, 1st or 2nd day draft pick, well, yeah, the NIL might help, but you may not be getting that much NIL.
Sure.
Compared to what you would be getting if you were a 5th round draft pick in the NFL.
And we're close. So one more year, I think, with the COVID year. I think 1 year away still. I think it's a very good point. I think NIL was interesting that he brought it up because obviously that means they've probably seen that, at least a couple guys going back. I do wonder if the college football playoffs will have any impact going forward because now if you're a college guy, you think, you know what? Yeah, we weren't a top 4 team. But again, let's just say Mizzou because I think Mizzou, K-State, KU's on the up and up still. So we'll throw all 3 local schools in. If you think you have a chance to make it, do you stay around a year longer? Not all the guys will. But what if you are a 5th rounder and you say, well, I want to win a championship at this school. I think we have a chance to make it to the college football playoffs. Is that worth it at that point to go back to school? I don't know how many will, but I wonder if that becomes a conversation now going from 4 to 12. I also thought it was interesting when he goes, the drop-off. My initial thought was he means talent. But the more I think about it, is he talking about just potential? Because you mentioned if you're older, you're more or less a finished product. Is he talking about, okay, well, now we know what these guys are. Maybe they can have a larger impact year one, but we do know what they are now. There's no room to mold. There's no mines for mold anymore. Now this is what you're getting in the 5th round and the 4th round. They're a basic finished product. And I wonder if that's what he means when he goes the drop off, not necessarily talent-wise, but the potential-wise. The floor may be higher, but the ceiling is a lot less.
Yeah, like these guys are older, and we're seeing that in these middle rounds. Does that make them – that's a great question. Does it make them lesser of a prospect, or does that just increase their floor a little bit? So maybe you might have some earlier expectations for this guy, not the long-term plan that this guy's going to be. He could grow into a L'Jarius Sneed in the 4th round. Like, okay, although we are talking about somebody who was an older prospect when he was drafted, so that's not the best example to use.
And grew a lot.
Yeah, so it's probably not the best. Well, L'Jarius Sneed, he was drafted when he was, what, 15? 23? Well, whatever. Sure, whatever. I mean, same thing. It's 8 years difference.
I do think it's a little funny, though, right? I mean, we talk all the time about how this 23-year-old's a finished product and this 21-year-old has all the potential in the world.
Right.
As if,
Well, it's like I've talked about a couple times that Xavier Worthy on Thursday night or Friday night, either one, because he's not going to go till Saturday. So Xavier Worthy, drafted Thursday or Friday night, is not he is not legally allowed to celebrate with an adult beverage because he is not turned 21 yet until the 28th, I think. 28th or 29th is when he turns 21 years old. Like, I'm not saying he won't. I'm just saying legally he wouldn't be allowed to partake in the celebrations and the revelry with, well, hopefully, I don't know, if somebody buys him beer, those who host lose the most. So you do have to worry about that if he's consuming alcohol as someone who's not 21 years old.
I thought there's a rule where in certain states where if you drink with your parents, you have like a glass of wine with dinner. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's it wasn't. I don't think in Kansas, but I think there's a couple states where that's legal. So I don't know if Detroit is.
Well, we do it with my son at night just so he can get used to having dinner parties and dinners that are more serious, right? We teach him about setting the table, which wines pair best with which food. He tries different wines so he can start to grow his palate.
Yeah, how to handle it, really. It's more of a handle.
Right.
Yeah, I get it.
That's exactly right. If he's ever on The Bachelorette, we don't want him to be the one that gets drunk and crazy the first night and gets kicked off. So we're just trying to raise him right. We're just being good parents. Why? Is this wrong?
Up next, Zen.
Is it wrong to give your child wine? It's wine. I mean, come on. It's not a big deal.
Grape juice.
It's grape juice, exactly. Oh, man. I mean, once he goes through First Communion, I mean, he's going to be drinking.
He has a taste. He has the taste.
Then he'll be like, is that Arizona? Is that, was that, that's from California? Okay. Because I tasted a little bit of the different type of grape there. Okay, all right.
That Welch's good. Is no longer for me. No longer a Welch kid.
Is that Welch? No, I'm pretty sure I taste, is that Welch? I thought that was the case. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll wrap up this hour. We'll talk with Mick Schaefer coming up at 1 o'clock. Hey, let's do this. Let's give away a 4-pack to the Comets tonight. Comets playing in the Eastern Conference Finals. They are taking on the Milwaukee Wave. Comets are much more tough. They're much tougher than Waves are. Let's just say that. In fact, they can create a tsunami of a wave, but that is with the Comet coming in and taking that. So I'll take the Comets tonight. Eastern Conference Finals, 6:30 tonight, Cable Dahmer Arena. You can hear the game right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. But let's give away a 4-pack, 913-381-810. We did caller number 8 last time. So let's go with this. Tyler Duffy pitched how many years with the Twins? 8. So let's go caller number 8 this time. Pitched 8 years with the Twins. We'll do caller number 8. 913-381-810 is the phone number. 913-381-810. 4-pack to the Comets taking on the Wave tonight at 6:30 at Cable Dahmer Arena. We'll take a timeout. Come back. More Zone next. Sterling Holmes, Dylan Michaels. We had up until 2 o'clock. We're going to give away 2 more 4-packs to the comments. We'll be listening in for that. 2 more 4-packs to the comments taking on the Wave. So if you did not win either of the previous 2, be listening in, and you will hear an opportunity to win those tickets for tonight's game. We played a decent number of clips from Brett Veach from Friday's press conference that he had that you heard right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. We also heard from Brett Veach in the Kevin Harvick podcast that took place over the weekend. We found out that he is quite the sim racer as well. Very serious about his sim racing. I know he's a big horse racing fan too. So he is a man of many backgrounds. He really enjoys to play the ponies, and he apparently is such a big NASCAR fan that he now is a sim racer. And in his part-time job, on his side gig, he also puts together Super Bowl teams.
Well, we know he likes the ponies because he always beats them. He always beats Denver.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yep. No, I like it. I like it. And I like how every once in a while he'll get together with some friends and put together a decent team. When he's outside of his main gig of betting on the horses and sim racing and trying to win some races that way. So that was cool to hear some of the things that outside of just Chiefs. Also, apparently Eric Stonestreet maybe is in the draft room with them on draft night. I don't know.
It's awesome.
So
how do we get invited to that?
Well, we're not Nick Jacobs. Nick Jacobs got invited.
Yeah, it's true.
At least to see the process.
TTP.
Yeah.
Trust the process.
Trust the process. He got invited to see the process of putting 221 names up there. Nick Jacobs has to take him up on that. He has to take him up on that. We'll talk with Mick Schaefer to see how much Nick Jacobs has talked about the fact that he was invited by Brett Veach to go and see his process of how he puts together his board of, now we know, 221 players that are there.
The Zone is presented by Guaranteed Foods, delivering all natural food to Midwestern families since 1958. Enjoy healthier food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
All right, continuing right here on this Friday edition of The Zone, Jason Anderson with you, Sterling Holmes, Dylan Michaels, and of course, Mick Schaefer hanging out with us on this Monday, 1 o'clock hour. He is presented by Empower Payments, boosting your business and charity with every transaction. Learn more at empowerpayments.com. KSHB 41 Sports Director, Mick Schaefer. Mick, how are you?
Hey, I'm good.
Good.
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thaning for being here.
Saw you yesterday.
Thanks for being
today.
here.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, this is back-to-back days that I've seen you.
Back to back.
What-
Just informing the Kansas City sporting public on what's going on with the sports ball world.
That's right.
What we're
Yeah,
doing.
we did.
Somebody's gonna do it.
Yeah, we did talk about football guys.
Yeah.
and then we did some kickball football guys that we talked about a little bit too. So yeah, we are just trying to opinion shapers on the sports thingies in town. The old stick and ball. And the old oblong-shaped leather football.
That's it. We're sticking ball guys.
Yeah, that's right.
We're sticking ball guys.
Yeah. Sterling apparently he thinks better with his bat. He's Daniel Caffey over here. So, do you think better with a bat in your hands there, Sterling?
Just my wood.
Okay. Does that make you think better? That seems like you're using the wrong brain. Typically, that's what gets you in trouble through most of your life.
We've gone from 0 marks to 3 in 5 minutes. So, thank you, guys.
Well, will we even air them on the cuts? Because we didn't have cuts last week. Have you told?
Okay.
You told your boss yet?
What happened?
We didn't do cuts last. Well, we wanted to save them for you.
Good. No, that's fine. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I
It's
didn't want
my
to miss
fault.
out.
I didn't do an airline. I didn't flag in a 737 to.
No, I
give
told
him the
Dylan.
signal.
I go, Dylan, let me know when you want cuts. And he goes, yeah, I'll let you know. I'll give you a signal. And I'm looking at Dylan the whole time. Never once see a signal. And he goes, 3 minutes. And I'm like, all right, so I guess 3 minutes till cuts. It's my
You've got a clock, right?
Yeah.
Do you think I look at clocks?
It's at 1:52. 3 minutes. We're gonna do cuts at 1:55. That's
the
cool.
play out music. He started playing out, and he's like 10 seconds. And Sterling's like, you know what that music means, right? I'm like, end of the show? Nope. He goes, time for cuts. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's not time for cuts.
I was listening off and on Friday. I missed that part.
Yeah, that's
and,
great.
And that should be part of the cuts on Friday, coming up this Friday. So yeah.
Yes, it will be.
I
and
thought,
also,
I thought Petra would have liked us going into his show with our cuts. I thought that
loved
would have
that.
been a good.
yeah, take up the
Good.
first segment for sure.
Yeah, why
And
not?
That gives him less work. I mean, come on.
I can't remember if there were 0 signals or like 4 or 5, like a thumbs up, wave.
It was either.
Point.
I'm trying to rack my
I
brain.
can't
There was
remember
either
that.
Okay,
0
roll back
or
the tape.
8.
Roll back the tape. I did not. I saw the
Check tape.
thumbs up.
Check tape.
Videotape.
I
Check
thought,
tape.
I thought the thumbs up, and I thought he was just saying good job. And I was like, thanks, Dylan. Appreciate it, man. Good job to you, too. You're doing a fine job
Listen,
back there.
This was all Dylan's fault because he didn't explain to Sterling that the stuff that it goes in the show actually goes in the show.
You guys don't. So we
show.
don't leave here at 2:00 on Friday
I'll-
and then go listen to the cuts with just
I'll
us.
wear this one. I'll wear this one.
No,
I
don't- you
should
don't have to
been
wear this
more
one, no.
specific.
He's the host.
I should have given 5 thumbs ups.
Not 4.
Point.
I
You've
wanted to.
heard the show before, though,
I have,
right?
yes,
Okay,
but
yeah.
but since I have started, I've actually never done cuts. We've never done cuts.
Wow.
Since I've been
Okay.
here, so pardon
You
me.
haven't been on Friday for cuts?
No, I've never once. Even when you and I did it at the ghillie suit show.
Sure, yeah.
The
we still
Casey
did-
Outdoors.
no cuts.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
No cuts that day. Okay.
That was awesome. That's a
Well, we're going to
blast.
make up for it on Friday. We're going to do an hour of cuts starting at 1:00 on Friday. We won't need to talk about anything that would happen the night before. Nothing's going on the night before. Our show Friday, there's nothing happening the night before. The Royals play a day game. That's already going to be exhausted conversation about that, and nothing's going on that night.
I was baffled
Thursday.
by the Royals playing a day game. Like, what? Why are they playing 12-10 in Detroit? Oh, in Detroit.
Yep.
That's why.
They're heading up there for the draft. They want to be done by the time the draft gets going on. They're there Thursday night. They're flying.
Clear out all those people from the downtown area.
Flying directly in on Thursday after the game against the Blue Jays. Boom. Let's get to Detroit. Let's get to the draft and hang out. And you know what? Brett Veach can have Bobby Witt go out and announce. Why not? What's Bobby Witt doing that night? He can go out and announce the draft pick.
And I think it's outside again, right? Is it at Hyde Park? Is that what it's called there?
I'm not sure,
some sort of park.
Take your
Hart
word
Park,
for it.
I think.
Hart Park?
Hart Park.
Hart Park. I thought it was like a hard part. Like,
yeah. I don't know what the weather's supposed to be like, but hopefully it's nice like it was here last year.
Okay. All right.
For our little draft.
I mean, I hope so. It would suck that if the weather was terrible and it was outside.
It would be fun for Kansas Cityans to go to watch a Royals game in Detroit and then catch the Chiefs drafting the next
Walk on
superstar.
over.
I was looking it up right now because I didn't even think of the potential options. 11-hour drive, little too steep for your boy. I was thinking of a little late edition
To Detroit?
Yeah, 11 hours and 6 minutes.
You really feel it. Once you get past 8 hours, you really feel it.
It's
8 hours is
cut
kind
off.
of the
eight hours. It's the Louisville.
Yeah.
Jason knows this very well.
I mean,
8
Kansas
hours.
City is 8 hours away from like 50 different.
Yeah, it's a
big
lot of places
cities.
that are 8 hours away. You're right about that.
Chicago,
Denver's, the
Louisville,
the
Denver.
Dallases, the Minneapolis, Nashville.
Jalen Thompson did a story in the Kansas City Star where he asked different Royals about who they want to draft. So you've got like guys that are Bears fans, and Pasquantino's a Jets fan, and Bobby Witt said Xavier Worthy for the Chiefs.
Okay.
So there you go. So Bobby Witt is on record saying Chiefs get Xavier Worthy, and he'll be there. I'm telling you, if the card is Xavier Worthy, it should be Bobby Witt introducing it, and not Raj Goodell.
Right. Where did Worthy go to high school? Was it somewhere maybe around where Bobby went?
No, he said. So Bobby's said that he grew up. I think his comment was rooting for Oklahoma.
He did. Well, his dad played at OU.
Yeah, so that's what it was.
His brother-in-law was a quarterback at OU.
Yeah, so he said by rooting for Oklahoma, I have a pretty good understanding of the guys at Texas.
Yeah, Texas, yeah.
And so he said Xavier Worthy's a guy that would fit well with Hollywood Brown. I'm like, okay, there you go. Bobby weighing in.
The fastest guy in baseball has to endorse the
That's right.
fastest guy in the
Speed.
draft.
That's what speed do.
That's what speed do.
That's what
I like
speed
that.
do.
I like that.
You know what speed doesn't do? Get thrown out at third with one out because there wasn't that speed on Saturday night. But why are you going to bring up old stuff? I'm talking about Isbell. So again, it's hard for me to get over. It's a tough one to get past.
But good thing he gets on base all the time.
Yeah, he got walked 4 straight pitches on none that were really close, so he didn't have to do anything, and then he got thrown out at third. So,
I mean, if you're going to gamble there, you gamble with one out.
Yeah, but the ball's right in front of you.
Yeah.
I mean, but do you really need to gamble when you're down by 3 and you got Witt, Vinny, and Salvi coming up after you? It's probably not the smartest move, but he does make up for it by getting on base all the time. So he's always out there to get his base running figured out. He's there all the time on base. Roughly 2 out of every 10 times he goes to the plate, he gets on base, which there are worse things to have happen. It could be 0 out of 10. It could be 1 out of 10. It just happens to be 2 out of every 10 times he gets on base right now. So, why are we only focusing on the negative stuff? I think that's ridiculous.
I don't know. Well, I would focus too on the 7-run inning on Saturday if we're going to focus on stuff.
I know it's fun. It could have been more if it wasn't for Isbell getting thrown out at third. But whatever. They don't need that out. It's not a big deal.
The 7-run inning that they gave up.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. That's not what lost them the game. Isbell getting thrown at third.
Gotcha.
No. They totally win the game. Yes, I get it. All right, I understand. There's one particular thing I'm hung up on, and it shouldn't really be that, considering your ace gave up 7 in the second inning.
Mick, you might need his bat to protect yourself from Jason's
not at all.
anger right now.
No, I'm a pacifist. We're fine. We only double up on Josh with Matt Derrick and I when we did that. When we were arguing over how things work.
Velasquez had a couple big at-bats.
He
Didn't
did.
come through with the last couple days, too.
Yep.
There's that.
Yeah, swinging and
Just in
missing.
the Kyle Isbell defensive club. I will defend him.
No, that's fine. People can defend him. They can. People have the right to be wrong.
Thanks.
It's fine. You have the right. My son is on this kick to where he wants to point out that it's just your opinion. Like we were talking about, so we're looking at cars.
Does he even do that with like facts, right?
No, but
Like,
no, he's not in that position yet.
Chiefs have won the last
hate
2 Super
facts.
Bowls. Well, that's just your opinion.
Yeah, no, it's like we're car shopping right now, and so my wife saw this like green car that like sort of looks black, but when then you get closer and the certain sunlight looks green, and she's like, I really like that. I'm like, it was awful. It was awful. And my son goes, "That's just your opinion." Yeah, I know.
Is he the Big
I'm
Lebowski?
aware.
Is he the dude?
Well, that's just like your opinion, man. Like, well, that's your opinion. I know. I didn't say it was a fact that it wasn't any. I'm just
Why
saying.
didn't you say that to Mom when she said she liked it?
It's her opinion, too. Also, it's your opinion, then it's my opinion. Oh, wait. No, that's a fact. Never mind.
Does he hate fact or fiction on this show?
He doesn't listen. He's in school, typically, at the time. So
he would listen or lose.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep. He chooses sports over leisure.
There's a podcast. He can go back and listen.
He listens to the cuts all the time. That's the one thing.
Not last week, buddy.
He was disappointed on Friday. He had the day off, and he's like, hell yeah, I can listen to the cuts. And then he was listening. I was out doing some yard work. Maybe.
Cry.
I wasn't doing yard work. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't doing anything. And he was like, Daddy, there were no cuts today. I'm like, look, son, we all can't have great days.
It's all Dylan's fault anyway.
Yeah, he's like, Dylan said it's his fault, but I think it was Sterling's.
I said, listen,
it sure
son.
as hell wasn't Mick's.
I said, listen, son, you had the day off today. Okay, you don't have to have everything go your way, and Dylan probably messed it up. So let's just think about the people who already feel bad enough.
Fact.
You don't, so son. You don't think
It's
Dylan
your
feels?
opinion, man.
You don't think Dylan feels bad enough? I mean, yeah, but I like the cuts. Yeah, that's your opinion. Okay, that's fine. Okay, it's not held by Dylan. He messed it up on purpose.
He texted me at 11 o'clock. Dylan did, not your son. And Dylan felt so bad at 11 p.m.
Thank you for the clarification. That would have been odd.
11 p.m. Dylan texts me, goes, dude, I'm so sorry, bro. I can't believe I didn't give you a signal, any type of warning. It was crazy.
He texted you at 11 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
You know we can prove this, right?
I deleted that text.
Well, did you, Dylan?
Nope.
There's an app, I believe, that I could get into.
There's phone records and, reality.
Yeah,
there's
one. Here's the thing. One thing I've learned about watching Dateline: you delete the text, it's gone. Nobody can
never come back.
can find it anywhere.
I heard that with credit cards. You max one out, you cut it, and then throw it into the water. It's
gone.
It's gone.
It's gone forever.
Good luck.
It's
They
gone
can't
forever.
hunt you down.
No, they have no idea. You don't have the card anymore. That's how they track you.
Sorry,
that
guess
little
what?
chip in the card.
You can go get another one and then max that one out as well. So you can just keep racking it
Never,
up. Keep
never
doing more
thought
and
about
more.
that. How often
Not
do you need good
financial
credit,
advice.
though?
Right.
But how often do you need good
Never.
credit?
Well, dude, car shopping. That's about it.
Yeah, but very rare though. Are you? I mean, car shopping and house shopping. Other than that, do
And
you
there's
really
some places
need
you don't
good?
even need credit
Right.
for car shopping.
I mean,
So-
come on. If I pay cash, I don't need credit. I show up with cash right there. They don't need to check my credit score.
You doing
know?
that, Jason?
No. That is a negative, Ghost Rider.
Hey, get like a
budget is full.
one of those briefcases, and just put like 10% down in the briefcase, and then also have your card in there, of course. So you only have like
Oh, okay, 10%.
like 10% of the car, and you put it in the
right,
briefcase
yeah.
because it's gonna be very funny when they open it up, and it's just like a slight corner of the of the
If I'm putting
briefcase.
10% down, I'm looking for more than a $5,000 car, so that's unfortunate. You have 10%? Roughly over the 72 months, I'll get past 10%. Can you do 84 months? You got a 96-month one? 108? Looking for a 108-month. My financial advisor says stretch it out as long as you can. He says just stretch it out. You can always pay more on it there, which I told him, yeah, I could.
Get your house and your car on a 30-year note.
I could have always paid more on my student loan, too. But, 25 years later, still paying on that. What's the minimum per month? Okay, cool. I'll just go ahead and pay that. Waiting for them to write that off there. Let's go ahead and get on that, people. All right, Mick Schaefer hanging out with us. I want to play this clip. It's from Tyreek Hill from the weekend. This is from Mick Schaefer pointed this out because it's one of his favorite podcasts. It was the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast.
It's in my rotation.
Mick Schaefer heard this with Tyreek Hill. The video is really cool because there's like sitting around in lawn chairs, like outside in like a park. So it's two guys, and then they're interviewing Tyreek Hill, and they're like 15 feet apart from each other. So it's like two guys sitting in chairs just hanging out. And
During COVID times?
I was going to say it feels like their social distance is like we're driveway tailgating here during COVID, just hanging out, families 10 feet apart, just grouped together. But here's Tyreek Hill. And the question was sort of about him being a stud player, but still, having his feet held to the fire when mistakes are happening or happen by like coaches and things like that.
From the meeting room with the coaches calling you out in front of other guys, because a lot of guys aren't used to that. A lot of guys aren't used to sitting inside of a meeting room, being the best player on their team their whole entire life, and then a coach saying, bro, you suck this play.
You ever had somebody say that to you?
Oh yeah, this year, Miami Dolphins. You know what I'm saying? Like the play against Snead, the Chiefs. Everybody see the play against the Chiefs when motherfucker him into the flow. He called me out. He like, Reek, bro, you supposed to be the best player in the league, and you got this guy putting hands all over you like that. Man, we pay you all this money for what? And for me, I love that because I'm gonna take that to heart and I'm gonna get better from it. That'll never happen again to me in my life, man. You feel me? If a mother cannot hold me accountable, I feel like I'm not gonna be able to get better. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously the coaches can bypass that. You know what I'm saying? And just be like, he'll get better from it. But if he's not saying nothing, like the other guys in the locker room, they gonna look at it as, if Reek can do it, I can do it, and that's not getting the team better. I need everybody to get better, bro. You know what I'm saying? Baby brother Waddle, I got him up under my wing trying to teach him.
I do want to know when that took place, like when Mike McDaniel said, "You bleeping suck. You're supposed to be
not Mike McDaniel. I'm guessing it's a receivers coach, right?
I mean, it must be. I don't know.
I've seen enough of those Hard Knocks where it's ruthless in there. It is to the point. It doesn't matter who you are.
Was that play in the first half or the second half?
I think it was second half.
See, I thought it was second half too. So it's like people are going, well, that must have been halftime of that game.
They were not looking at film at halftime. Give me a break. Does anybody know anything about football?
God, I'm pretty sure it was that. But was it during an exit interview? Because the season was over.
You got the iPad.
The surface. It was on the surface in the game.
But the season was over.
10-minute halftime.
But also, like the season was over then in that game. So like, when did they get together in like the film room? And he slammed me to Cancun is something else that Tyreek Hill had said, after the season. But you remember that play when he slammed me to the floor? When Snead slammed me to the floor? Like, everybody saw that play. I know you've seen that. Everybody's seen the play where I got my ass kicked and slammed to the floor by L'Jarius Sneed.
Look, maybe they finish up the week like they would after every game, even though it's the end of the season and all that. Maybe they've had film sessions, in March or whatever.
Exit meeting, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. Was it an exit meeting or something? Like, what do we pay you for? This happening to you with L'Jarius Sneed? What do we pay you for? And he could say, I was actually the only guy that really showed up in that game. So just what do you pay me for is to be the best player on the field for our team, and I was the main guy there, and I was also going up against one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and I was the only guy that showed up in that game.
Imagine Mike McDaniel just coming to him with those capris on, the glasses, just, man, you bleeping suck.
Suck. Like, what do we pay you for?
And just Mike McDaniel's with those. I could not take that guy seriously. Like, I don't know how. You see those pants.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You see the glasses.
They look comfortable. Those pants look really comfortable.
The joggers?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's...
I mean, here's the thing.
Wild.
What's a more comfortable coaching style?
Well, a robe is comfortable too, Jason. You're not going to see me rocking that on the sideline.
Well, I'm not saying you should do that. But, I mean, that's certainly one extreme, certainly.
Belichick. Whatever he was wearing, that has to be the most comfortable.
Match your environment.
But like coaches in basketball wear like the suit, like that is incredibly uncomfortable.
That's more and more. It's
wearing like a tie.
But
it's just so
it's
dumb.
great because you know how pissed off the coach is. That's the key. You can throw the tie, then it's the jacket, then it's unbuttoning the.
That's just dumb.
Yeah.
And by the time he's done, then he's only wearing a robe.
It's a classy
He's
look,
so
Jason.
mad at the officials. Look at him. He's now down to his boxers. That's how mad he is.
I feel like football gets it right. Baseball gets it way wrong the other way. Like, you don't have to look like the players, okay? You have to wear a uniform, right?
I think it should be more like baseball.
Everybody.
I think the head coach should be dressed up as I think Andy Reid should be walking around in his full Reid punt, pass, in, kick, and then I think Bill Self should be wearing the Jayhawks jersey.
Yep.
The full-on basketball shorts and jersey without a shirt underneath.
Bruce Pearl in a basketball uniform right
yes,
now.
I can. Bruce Pearl is totally rocking the 1980s length shorts, too. Guaranteed.
He would absolutely love it.
Is Bill Self rocking the 03 like TJ Ford length shorts, or is he going Magic Johnson with it?
No, I think he's got some shorts down to close to the knee.
Yeah, I think he seems more of a TJ Ford.
But wouldn't
style.
they just have to be in the jumpsuits though, because they're on the bench? They could just wear the.
Nope. You gotta be wearing what the players are wearing out there, so you don't get your warm ups. You don't have to have the tearaway pants or anything like
then
that.
To Sterling's point, as he gets up more upset, he can flip off the button pants and everything else.
That's a great point. Toss the warm up thing.
Even better, the shooting sleeve. The shooting sleeve on the coach's arm, and if you're real mad, you rip that one off.
You have to dress up as if you were playing. So like Bill Self would have like the knee pads And you'd have like the
leggings you rock now.
the high ankle braces that go really high, just in case. He's got that going. Yeah, absolutely. Andy Reid, full on, pads and helmet. And he can, talk into the. It'd be great. That's what they should do. I don't see the baseball managers with like coats on or anything. They're not dressed like the pitchers with only one arm. They're dressed like the rest of the players. They've got the full on uniform. Why are they the only ones required to wear a uniform? Why should Bill Self be allowed to wear, a tracksuit, his athleisure?
Why are basketball players the only ones that have like warm-ups over their uniform? They're indoors.
Right.
But football doesn't have warm-ups.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's really cold, you have a coat on.
Yeah,
baseball, if it's cold, you got a jacket. But otherwise, you have your uniform on the bench. You have your uniform out in the field of play.
Right.
In basketball, you got to be dressed differently on the bench.
Yeah,
which sucked. I hated it. Right, whenever wasn't playing, I always made sure, man, I'm going to throw this up. It looks like I've been in the game.
Looks like I've been in the game.
Looks like
That's
I've
right.
been in the game.
You wearing your warm-ups, and it's like, that guy doesn't.
He has not played. I can tell.
Does not. How do you know he hasn't played? He's got his warm-up on still.
It's that season again, by the way, with the NBA playoffs. You'll see when they shake hands, there'll be some gentlemen with their warm-ups off that have never seen a minute of action.
Oh, the NBA playoffs, to where the benches are way more into it now. And so now you see the guys at the end of the bench still wearing their warm-ups that are up, jumping, tapping the head, fadeaway shot, crossing guys over when their team makes a bucket. Like, you see a lot more of that now that the playoffs are here.
It's great. You go back to college. Who was the team back in college basketball that had the whole entire – Dylan, you probably know this.
I don't remember, but
I
want
to say it was like when they had the celebrations.
It wasn't Duquesne.
It's like Wagner or something like that.
It wasn't Wagner, but it was
Smaller
something
school.
like there's a smaller school.
Monmouth or something like
Monmouth.
that.
It was Monmouth.
Yeah.
Nailed
Nails.
it.
Yeah.
Got it there. I mean, nice job. What do we say? Not Duquesne, not Wagner, Monmouth.
Had to be Monmouth.
Those are the three, right?
Things down.
Those
I always
are the
get them
three.
confused.
It's like, okay, which was that smaller school? Was it Duquesne, Wagner, or Monmouth?
I think I only know where one of them is located. Duquesne's in Pittsburgh.
Nothing
I don't know the other two.
Nothing beats the gargoyle celebration where you get on your chair and then you perch like a gargoyle. The Lakers used to do that when they had Robert Sacra. Remember him with like Ryan Kelly? Those horrible Lakers teams. They had some good bench mobs back then.
Nice. Love it. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We got Learn Funniest Best coming up on the other side of the break. More Zone next. edition of the show. Breaking news in the NFL. Another quarterback on the move. This coming from Ian Rappaport, Rap Sheet. Zach Wilson of the New York Jets is being traded to an organization that is looking for a quarterback with the last name of Wilson. The Denver Broncos are trading for Zach Wilson. This one's going to work. This Wilson will work just fine. Russell didn't work out. Zach will. So Zach Wilson is now a Denver Bronco.
Who's left? Are there other Wilsons out there? Quarterback Wilsons?
I don't know.
There's a
Denver's.
Luke Wilson with 2 L's that used to be a tight end. I don't know if he's around anymore.
But I don't think quarterback. I think Denver is cornering the market on Wilsons. Next year they'll have a different Wilson quarterback. There's got to be a Wilson somewhere that can throw a football.
Wilson.
Yeah, that's right.
I think he had a volleyball.
He had a volleyball. That's right. So Zach Wilson is now a Denver Bronco, no longer a New York Jet. So there you go.
Do you know his middle name? His middle name's Capono.
Ari?
Which I
Zachary?
Zachary Capono Wilson.
Capono.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Wonder what he's named after.
Jason Capono, probably.
I was waiting for somebody to say Jason Capono. Well done. Nice grab. All right, so let's do Learn Funniest Best here on Sports Radio 810 WHB on this Monday. I learned a couple things. One, what I learned is that when you're in the market for a car and there's like a couple of different specific cars you're looking at or types, you notice like every car on the road. Yeah. Like almost every car on the road you're looking at, like, oh, what's that car? This car over there. What's that car over there? What's that car? Oh, what type of car is that? What car is that? It's amazing. Like the last week, every time we're on the road driving, it's like, oh, look at that car over there. What about? Oh, do you like that color? What about that guy? No, that's the green color. I told you I didn't like it. Well, that's just your opinion. Shut up, son. We've already established this. Damn it. So I learned that, and then I also learned there's a specific Twitter account that is called Jose Canseco Uses Punctuation. And the entire Twitter account is responding to Jose Canseco tweets, adding correct punctuation to it. That's all it is. It puts commas, it puts, periods, awesome. Exclamation points, capitalizing, because if you've seen Canseco's Twitter account, it's just run-on sentences. It's just words grouped together with no commas or punctuation whatsoever. And so every single tweet, this Twitter account replies with correct punctuation. It's called Jose Canseco Uses Punctuation. So I learned that over the weekend, and I really enjoyed just going back and looking through some of the... and there are some where you add punctuation, and you're like, still didn't make sense. Still didn't make sense. All right, Sterling, what'd you learn?
I learned that laser tag is actually more fun at our age than when you were younger. I was surprised. My fiance and a little joint 30th birthday party between me and one of my really close friends.
Was this
from
on
college.
Saturday?
It was on Saturday.
I see what you did there.
Saturday morning. It was electric. It was fun. So we did some laser tag, and it gets intense.
Yes.
Like, you get real intense. They say no running, but they allowed us to run, and there was 9 of us, and
so I guess there is running then.
Yeah, we were really getting after. There was some body rolls going on in there. I'm not trying to get hit, so
everybody's acting like they're a Green Beret.
Yeah, it was
like they've actually served and is a combat veteran.
We're calling out words like, you get that alley. Get that alley.
Watch your 6. Okay, over there. Cover me. Hey, doing that, the hand sign. I don't know what that means. Just go over there, okay? Just go over the cover me.
I understood that reference.
Cover fire. Cover fire.
It's always sunny, yeah.
Yes, just go over there. What'd you learn, Mick?
There's a guy named David Pecker who's testifying in Trump's trial. So just to be clear, in Trump's hush money trial involving porn star Stormy Daniels, there's a guy named David Pecker who's like one of the big witnesses.
Okay.
That's all. I learned it.
That is something to learn. There are many different flavors to learn over the weekend. People learn a lot of different things. And I learned that too.
Know where you're going.
Yes, I don't know. I'm not sure. Dylan, what'd you learn?
Switching gears here.
Okay.
To
Why?
I learned that Cam Boozer He's a Red Sox pitcher. He tore his UCL, had shoulder surgery, and also broke his back after being hit by a car. He actually quit baseball to become a carpenter, and at 31 years old realized he could pitch. The Red Sox called him up this weekend to pitch.
No kidding.
It was awesome. A great video of him kind of getting emotional on the bench as well, like after his outing. It was cool.
It's amazing.
Cool story.
How do you sort of figure out you're a carpenter? How do you figure out because it's one thing for like the Disney movie that was based on real life where the guy was a high school coach and it's like, hey coach, you want to pitch to us?
Rookie of the year?
Yeah, no, that was just the rookie. Rookie of the year was Henry Rodengartner, also true story, also based on a true story.
Got my rookie of the years mixed up.
That'll happen.
That's all good. Yeah, I do that all the time. So like, how do you figure out that you can still pitch if you're like a carpenter? Like, are you just in a fast pitch league with your friends?
Playing
like your buddies?
catch with his kid and just burned one right down the middle. Just
Dad, throw it hard, and it goes right through his glove like Salvi's mitt the other day. Let's go with the funniest. We start with you, Sterling.
We were just telling stories at dinner the other night about my my uncle. He was mentally handicapped, and he was in a group home, and there was he kept saying, "Come on, Red. Come on, Red." And we were trying to get down to why he kept saying, "Come on, Red."
Roulette.
And let me get to the funny part. Yeah. And
go.
so
turn my mic off.
So the group home were like, so what happens? Well, you get in a van, and then they say, move over, and then you get to this place, kind of looks like a boat, and there's all these flashing lights, and cha-ching, 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 and then you get there and you yell, "Come on, Red! Come on, Red!" Well, apparently, the leader of the group home was taking some of their money and going and taking all of them to the casino to gamble, and he was the one that busted them by eventually just kept saying, "Come on, Red," and we're like, what do you mean, "Come on, Red"? And it was the roulettes. So
wow.
I thought that was
so his scheme was blown up by putting it on red every time.
That was. So what do you mean? All the lights and
like
the cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching looked like a boat, and just "Come on, Red." So I thought that was that was pretty funny.
It's interesting. Yeah, I'm glad they found him. Glad they figured that out.
It was about 10 years ago now, but I just we were reminiscing. We thought it was very, very funny.
That's awesome. Mick, funniest for you from the weekend?
So Aaron Boone got ejected this weekend.
I didn't see that.
Oh, wow, it's the funniest thing. It was the first inning of the game against the A's, and he was standing there just kind of like chewing his nails, looking out in the field, and all of a sudden the ump tossed him. And he looks immediately, me, what? And look at his hitting coach. Hitting coach starts pointing up at this guy in the blue shirt in the front row. It was a fan the whole time. And of course, umps can't change their mind
once you're
ever,
thrown out,
right?
Thrown
Even
out.
when they realize they're wrong.
Yeah.
And so Boone proceeds to lose it for about a minute and a half on the field. Just reading this guy the right act, and he wouldn't change his mind, of course, and so he really earned the ejection at that point. You got to see it's so funny, just sitting there and he's, wait, what? Me? It's the first inning, and the other umpires wouldn't. I mean, you don't get together and talk over a call at all. What do you see? And so there's this guy in blue just kind of sitting there because he's responsible for getting. He's a Yankees fan, getting Aaron Boone ejected from a game.
Well, and once you throw somebody out, there is no. It's in the rule book. You cannot allow
once you
them.
Make up your mind, you can't change it.
Yeah, once you point, there's no going back on that.
Well,
it's done.
Their ass is in the jackpot.
That's right.
Our ass is in the jackpot. Dylan, your funniest from the weekend?
My funniest is Jasmine Koo. She hit a shot in the LPGA.
That was great.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Good.
Off the Chevron waterboard sign on the middle of like the lake or pond they have, and went on the fringe green. So I didn't know you could do that. I thought the John Rahm shot was like the coolest one.
Yeah,
so this one.
So it's the 18th.
It's supposed to go in the water.
So it's the 18th. Yeah. She's fighting for low amateur. She's up by one stroke as low amateur. She's trying to get there in two, so she pulls out, I think a 3-wood or whatever.
Probably something like that.
And she said she chunked it because it was above my feet. And as soon as she hit it, she's like, "That's in the water." And it's heading towards there, and there's the advertising board
right in the middle of
the advertising board.
Pond. Yeah.
Pong lands and bounces over on the green. She birdies and gets low amateur.
No way.
birdies
That
and
is
gets
awesome.
low amateur.
Great story for her. Not so much for her competitor.
Yes,
No.
I know.
No.
She tried to get there in two, and it bounced right over the chevron side. It was awesome, man. So congratulations
It's
to
like
her.
Shooter McGavin, like the 9-iron now. Oh, you're fired. the competitor to her caddy.
Yeah.
Oh, you can hit it off the chevron
Chevron,
sign, huh?
huh? You know, why didn't you tell me that? I would have done that. We laid up. Huh? Everybody here to watch the low, and you lay up.
The Happy
Nice
Gilmore.
job. Exactly.
Just two putt around there, two putt, and finish tomorrow. No, I think I'll beat him now.
Yeah.
And then it proceeds to go with
Well, and we all know if the scaffolding falls on the green, you cannot pick
No,
it up.
I had to hit it off
where's the
Frankenstein's
lies?
fat foot.
Yeah.
My funniest from the weekend.
Both are not real rules, by the way.
Nope. My funniest from the weekend changed this morning when I saw this on Twitter. I had a previous funniest with the UCLA women's soccer team doing TikTok videos, training in the training room, and training to be a Division I male athlete. In terms of like how male athletes act and what they say. So like taking like the bands and holding them together and sort of like you stretch them out to work out your back and going, "Where's my hug? Where's my hug?" And then holding like a weight with your left hand and then holding another hand with weight in your right hand and go, "Do you need a ride? Come on over. You need a ride?" And then sort of shrugging, going, "I didn't know she was going to be here today. I didn't know she was going to be at the party. She's on the cheerleading team. Of course we're friends. She's on the..." So that was pretty good. But my funniest ended up being Jameis Winston out fishing over the weekend.
This is a redfin herring I'm holding right now, and as you know, he's wobbling. Wobble with me, wobble with me, wobble with me. He isn't able to talk because he is an amphibian. Is he an amphibian? No, he's a fish. I'm sorry, redfin herring. If you've seen SpongeBob, you see a lot of redfin herrings, but you don't see them get caught a lot. Redfin herring. Threadfin herring, not redfin, a threadfin. If you look at this, the fins, you can see a slight thread coming off right here to explain the significance of thread fins. I just literally made that up.
It's literally, there was like a little bit coming off of the fin. I thought maybe that was true. I'm like, okay, but he did call it a redfin herring. Also said the fish was an amphibian. I'm lying, it's a fish. Yes, it's a fish. But also he was like, "Wobble baby, wobble baby." So the fish is in his hand squirming, trying to get out. "Wobble baby, wobble baby." Jameis, man, he is. It never change.
No,
or leave the NFL. Yeah, so he's out fishing over the weekend. We go to the best from the weekend. Best, we start with you, Mick.
One of the best track meets in the country for high schoolers and collegians is the KU Relays each and every year. They held that out there now, and so it is. Rock Chalk Park is one of the nicest tracks in the country, and it's like up there. It's the same material as Oregon, right, and all those famous tracks out west, and so you can run fast on it. And the boys, high school boys mile, 18 guys broke 4:20, and it was just unreal.
On Saturday?
Yeah,
So makes sense.
Oh shoot, I didn't even go for that.
I thought that's what you were going for.
No. 18 guys broke 4:20 on 4:20.
Yeah, that's it, only 18?
Yeah. But then also, winning shot put was a guy by the name of Jackson Cantwell. His dad was an Olympic shot putter at Mizzou. His mom was an Olympic shot putter. And he threw it 69, he put it at 69 feet. Usually at a high school meet, high 40s, low 50s wins.
Wow.
69 feet. He's also the...
More like Canwell, am I right?
He's also the number one offensive line recruit in the class of 2026 and the number 2 recruit overall. He's 6'8", 300 pounds.
Nice.
So he's got a lot going on for him.
Wow.
Mizzou,
A lot of big
or-
time.
Yeah, I mean, Mizzou.
He's from Nixa.
There you
He's
go.
from Jason Bourne's hometown.
There you go.
Nixa, Missouri.
Oh, really? That's where Jason Bourne's from?
In the movie, yeah.
I did not know that. Wow, how about that? I do love the movie. I just never caught that reference. Matt Damon. What's the best for you, Dylan?
Best for me is Damian Lillard. He had a very good night last night. He was only down 33-35 in the first half to the entire Pacers team with 1 minute left in the entire first half. So that's how good his night
It's
was.
a surprising night that Halliburton only had 9 points. It was weird. My best from the weekend is, okay, so Jasmine Koo, The Chevron Championship on the 18th hole.
It feels more like a best than a funniest. To be honest with you, no offense, Dylan, but it feels like more like a best.
A little behind inside baseball here. It was my best. I just read it wrong. So the last one was actually my funniest.
Okay, so you just switched it up. That's all good.
There we go.
All good. Well, you would have beat me to it anyway, so we'd be combining the best there. Sterling, we wrap up with you. What was your best?
Again, not from the weekend, but it's just something I remember because you and I were talking, and I found this very funny. My dad has a Pete LeCoq jersey. And if you remember Pete LeCoq, Royals legend Pete LeCoq.
You know what that's Spanish for?
LeCoq.
Yep. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
Royals jersey.
And so, two little small tidbits about the Pete LeCoq jersey. One, Johnny Knoxville saw him wearing it one time and ran up to my dad and said, I have to get a picture with that. He had no idea there was an actual player named Pete LeCoq. He just thought my dad was wearing a LeCoq jersey and thought it was hilarious.
Also, his dad was just hanging out with Johnny Knoxville. But other than that.
And then second one time we were at a Royals game and he was wearing the jersey and some guy came up to him and said, I used to love watching you play. The guy legitimately thought my dad was Pete LeCoq. He kind of looks like Pete LeCoq, but that also made us laugh because he just played it off as like, oh, thanks, man. I appreciate you. That means so much to me. You love watching me play. Why would he wear his own jersey and just sit on the third base dugout side, rocking it, just hanging out?
Yes.
Like,
let people know.
I thought it was funny. So
last year at the draft, Dwayne Bowe was walking around in the crowd wearing a Dwayne Bowe jersey. So it's not that surprising. Like we were leaving and walking away, and it was walking down the street, and people are like running up and getting autographs and pictures, and I'm like, who is that? And it's like, well, he's wearing a Dwayne Bowe jersey. I'm like, well, it can't. That's Dwayne Bowe. Dwayne Bowe wearing a Dwayne Bowe jersey is just unbelievable.
It's like the dude that looked like Klay Thompson, and he would go around San Francisco dressing like
Greg
Klay
Gurley's
Thompson.
cousin.
Is
First
that
cousin.
really?
That looked like Klay Thompson?
Yes, that's Greg Gurley's first cousin. He's like a YouTuber.
That's hilarious.
And,
And so he would wear.
His name's
Gray Thompson.
But he would wear the jersey in like the complete uniform, and people would like take pictures with him in San. And you're like, why would Klay Thompson be out at the bars wearing his own jersey and headband?
It's like the dude in Texas that was walking around the mall that looked like Patrick Mahomes, but he was wearing a Chiefs shirt. It's like, you think Mahomes is rocking a random Chiefs T-shirt around a mall by himself? Like, just like
Guys, I can't believe we're forgetting Russ Wilson wearing his own Broncos jersey to the first training camp practice.
Mr. Unlimited.
So, I mean, that was all time. With the coolest truck I've ever seen in my life behind him, but you can't wear your own jersey to your first practice.
Dawson Gurley is his name. He goes by something else on YouTube, but yeah.
Was he the guy that snuck in and was doing shoot-arounds?
So, yeah,
that was really good.
Because they thought he was Klay Thompson?
Yeah, but
because he's tall like Gurley. He's probably about Klay Thompson's height.
But he wore the Klay Thompson uniform, and he was shooting around, and none of the people at security
Big Dawes,
stopped him.
I think they call him Big Dawes.
Yeah, that's great.
That's amazing. We'll take a timeout, come back, wrap up the show. Coming up next. All right, so we know that Taylor Swift dropped 31 songs on Friday in a double album.
I was paying attention to the 12 that Pearl Jam dropped on Dark Matter,
That's
baby.
great. There's a lot of content going on. This is what would happen, though. We find out what would happen if you tried to play Taylor Swift at a Chiefs practice. This is Brett Veach on the Kevin Harvick podcast talking about Taylor Swift.
I remember the first game she attended was the Chicago Bears game, and I think right after that, we have a couple of young assistants that play the music at practice, and they started off with one of our practices with a Taylor Swift song. And like Travis looked at Pat, and Pat kind of shook his head, and they just told him like, no more of that. And so since that day, Taylor Swift has never been played at practice, and no one talks about it at all in our facility.
That's so fun.
I know. I mean, look, yeah, you can go ahead and stop that. I ain't playing Taylor Swift at practice, all right? Cut that out. So no songs will be. So I'm not going to play Alchemy. It's about him.
It's about him.
Come on, cut the scrubs from the team.
That Thank You Kim song. That's not a real thank you to Kim.
It isn't.
Or Amy, but Kim's hidden in there.
I thought it was Becky with the good hair.
That's what it is.
Gotta be.